stand by. We're about to begin. Good day and welcome to the HUD DRGR Updates for Release 7.3 conference call. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Mr. Vincent Grady. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, operator, and welcome everybody to today's webinar. Just briefly before we get started, we're going to hold off our questions until the presentation is completed, so please hold your questions until the end. You can ask your questions two ways, using the Q&A box in your live meeting, which is on the upper corner. And when you do that, please change your status from green to purple to let us know that you have a question. And we're not going to mention names when reviewing the questions, so feel free to ask your questions. And if you want to ask your question via the phone line, please just press *1 and the operator will put you through into the queue. If your question has been answered while you're on hold, you can get out of the queue by pressing *2. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Janine Cuneo with ICF.
Thanks so much, Vinny. First, I just want to go through the agenda today with people, and then I'm going to pass it off to Mark Mitchell with HUD. We're going to be going over the new functionality in DRGR. We're on release 7.3. There's really four major categories of changes. There's the receipts, RLF, and program income accounts. There's the voucher improvements that have taken place. There's the audit trail, user account management, and user certifications. Then there's a kind of all-encompassing bucket of miscellaneous grantee functions. That first one, that receipts, RLF, and program income accounts, is what we're going to be having the bulk of this call on. At the beginning, we will be going over the voucher improvements, audit trail, miscellaneous grantee functions quite quickly, and then we'll be going in-depth into the receipts, RLF, and program income, as we're deeming that as the most important for all of you to understand and understand quickly. And then we'll be taking questions and answers. So let me pass it off to Mark with HUD. Mark Mitchell, many of you have probably heard his name or talked to him personally. He's the Deputy Director of the Disaster Division and the DRGR System Administrator. Thanks so much and welcome, Mark.
Thanks, Janine. Oops, I think I went the wrong direction here. Sorry. So as Janine mentioned, we're going to cover a number of things today. We had DRGR release 7.3 went into production on Saturday. This one is very different, obviously, in terms of that it's going to actually affect how we manage program income. We're going to go again into that in detail. I do want to kind of mention again, as with anything else, if you're running into problems with the system, if things aren't working the way we're supposed to, or some of the data doesn't look the same, please make sure and contact us at drgr_help@hud.gov. In this release, we already know that some of the QPR financial data is not displaying correctly, and so we will be doing one emergency release at minimum, probably in about a week or so. We're going to wait to see if there's anything else, so keep us posted if there's anything that you're seeing that's looking a little strange. And then if you've got issues with managing program income right now, you would also direct those to drgr_help@hud.gov, and then we will try to get it to one of the team members and try to make sure that we work with you to resolve any of the program income issues you have. So first thing we're going to cover real quickly is some of the changes we made to vouchers. And none of these are really big changes in functionality. The main thing is on some of these miscellaneous things is just trying to improve, how the system works for you. So the biggest one we've been hearing for a couple of years is that the process of doing a revision was quite burdensome. If you had to split a draw into multiple accounts, it was taking quite a lot of time. So we made this where you can actually add different activities to a draw revision. Other folks were printing out hard copies of vouchers, and it was cutting across pages, things like that. So we, just like the action plan and the quarterly performance report, we actually are now going to allow PDFs to be generated of the vouchers. We also, instead of just being the approver having the comment fields, we're also going to allow voucher creators to have comment fields. One of the things that the IG is particularly interested in is on voucher revisions, what's the nature of the revision? So we've added a comment field there and also a reason category. So sometimes a voucher revision is specifically for returning funds that are ineligible, funds that were drawn in advance of need, and other times it is just data corrections, or HUD might have asked you to split an activity. So this will give you a little space to be able to document and track why it is you're making those voucher revisions. And the final one for voucher improvements is if LOCS rejected the voucher for any reason, instead of just giving you a code that you have to look up in the drawdown user manual, it will also now just have a little few words that describe what the rejection code is. That way you can identify, what you need to do to fix the issue before you resubmit the draw. So moving on, here's just a quick screenshot. So this, if you look, this very much follows the same kind of look and feel on the top part of the screen in terms of a voucher revision. The main difference that you're going to see is that you'll have the ability to add individual activities. So you'll have a little button down there that says Add Activity. And as you do, one of the other improvements is that you'll actually be able to see the available amount. So your original drawdown amount displays at the top, and then the available amount will display in that drop-down, so that you make sure on the right-hand side when you're putting an amount that you'll actually be able to identify, that the amount is within the amount that's available under that activity. So this one will allow you also to display at the very bottom how much is the total remaining on the individual activity. And you can also see the comment field towards the bottom. So the other item I mentioned on vouchers is just a simple download PDF. So when you're searching voucher, what you would do is look for the Search Maintain Voucher link on the left, and then you'll have a Download PDF button that shows on right to the right of that. So some of the other changes we mentioned were what we're calling an audit trail, user account management, and user certification. In the past, each action plan, when people make a change to the action plan on budgets or performance goals, I think a lot of folks thought that it really would only affect the future QPRs. What we found out, from the original coding was that actually the budget changes would actually, and the performance goal changes would clear out all the prior ones. So one of the items we had, again, like from the OIG, was that they wanted us to maintain and preserve a history, a trail of what those budget changes were, including who was the person who made the change and also when was that change made. So those things now, if we went back and saw, you'll be able to see that items will be preserved on the QPRs, and we're also going to create some folders in MicroStrategy that'll be a separate little folder that'll show history changes for things like action plans. Past that, we're also going to have the ability for HUD field managers in DRGR. In the past, they have been the persons certifying all the other HUD office users. The only person who was able to certify grantee administrative users was the CPD rep. In some cases, that person might be out of the office on vacation or out on a monitoring assignment. So one of the things we did was make HUD field managers also be able to certify grantee admin users as backups. Finally, one of the bigger changes, this is something that IDS has had for a while. Grantee users can now be associated with more than one grantee profile. We have a few instances where we've got states that have different agencies, and we've set up multiple grantee profiles. Other example we have is a state might actually want, if there's an entitlement community, if a user has a user account from the entitlement community within the state, if they want that other entitlement community staff person to put in a user account, they would let us know. We will add that other profile in, and we will allow them to be able to see multiple grants and grantee profiles, and then each grantee administrator would have to certify those users. Moving on, some of the miscellaneous functions that we've got is that the first one is that some of our grants have gotten so many activities that there's actually a few hundred. It's made it very difficult for some grantees, to navigate the index of the action plan page. So what we've done is group those by project and allow those to be expanded and collapsed. So we've added that to the action plan page already, and so in one of the next releases, what we'll do is add that also to the QPR page. Another big advance is that we are now going to have grantees be able to geocode addresses. Right now, there's no quality control over those, and what's happened is we've added an interface with the Geocode Service Center that's maintained by HUD's Office of Policy Development and Research. And as part of the entry of addresses, grantees will be able to go ahead and submit those to the Service Center to make sure that the addresses are actually valid. Under the Action Plan and Activities pages, sometimes when folks are navigating through page 2, page 3, it didn't really display what the activity number was you were working on. So if you're working on a number of them at once, it makes it a little difficult. So what we've done is added a grant number, grantee activity number, and activity title on a lot of the pages just so you can kind of remember which activity is you're working in right now. And finally, one of the things that is a kind of seems like a minor change, but it used to be that only if you had put in accomplishment during the quarter would you actually see performance measures during the quarter. What we've done is have the QPRs now include anything that you put a projection in should display in the QPR. So if you've got 0 accomplishments during the quarter, but you projected 20 housing units, that would now display in the QPR. That way we have a more comprehensive list and we can see what's going on at one time. So this next screen we're showing is an example of the multiple user profiles. So in this case, each of those profiles can have different roles. So here, this is just an example, a mock-up of the state of Georgia, someone that's a grantee administrator, and have a drawdown approved user rights. And then the city of Atlanta, we've created them to have an account for the city of Atlanta also as a grantee user. So we don't have anybody signing up for that. This is just a brand new function. So this is one we'll keep this, keep you posted if there's any changes in terms of how it works. The next one is the index page on the action plan. As you can see, you've got arrows. The top arrow will be to expand or collapse all the projects to activities. The ones in front of each project number would actually expand just the activity numbers within those projects. So we'll have, the project title and activity, I should say title, I think, or type there, and activity budget displaying in addition to the project budget. So hopefully it's going to make it a little bit easier to navigate and a little bit easier to work within that index page. The geocoding addresses page, we're not going to cover this in depth, but one of the things you'll notice here is that instead of just putting in the addresses, we also have a little select button on the left, and then there's a status button or status column in the middle, and an accept checkbox. And so as you're typing in data or typing in information like 314 Lemon Street, if you typed in 314 Lemon and then hit, checked it and said validate, it might turn back 314 Lemon Street instead of Lemon. And it'll say what accuracy do they think it is. Is it 100%, 80%, based on some codes that they've got. If you want to see what you submitted versus what the Geocode Service Center returned, you hit the View Detail button, and it'll say Geocode Service Center GSC details. If you want to see on map to see did it really get it where you thought it was supposed to be, then you can hit the View Map button. So again, this is going to be hopefully just a method to improve the accuracy of our addresses because we are outputting it. I think we're actually going to be moving towards, in one of the new releases, in the mapping, the IDIS maps that are going on for the consolidated plan, we're actually going to be rolling some of the NSP data into that. So the more accurate, obviously, the better. And so as part of our release, we did geocode some of them. The only thing any changes we made were actually if it was 100% match. So again, this is something that's here, and later on, one of the future releases, it will actually probably present multiple options for you where it said, well, there's 4 top picks for 314 Lemon Street, 314 Lemon Avenue. What I found in testing this is that it's really good if you don't know street, drive, lane, avenue. It's really good with that. Where it tends to choke up a bit is not if it's north and south or west and east. So it's really important to get those prefixes in, the directions in those addresses, because those will be the ones that you see that little red circle with the line through it. Those, the Geocode Service Center really doesn't handle the directions well if you don't put them in. So now we're going to move on to the bulk of what we're talking about today, which is the program income changes in terms of program income management. So just a little history before we get into the purpose of this. In the past, what we've had was DRGR was just a Sorry, whoever has got that on, could they put it on mute? We got some extra noise coming through.
Anything going on I should know about?
Yep. Someone please put that on mute there, whoever's got that. Sorry, so in in January of 2009, we actually integrated DRGR with LOCKSS, but it was no longer just a self-reporting system. As part of that, one of the things we did was create simulated vouchers from the amounts of draws that people had self-reported. So similar thing went on this time, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth, where we took the amounts of program income received, and we actually created the simulated receipts with those. So anything, all those receipts that if you're poking around already and start seeing receipts, those are from those QPR's amounts that you have put in to date. So what we had then before January of 2009 with the integration with LOCKSS, the only thing that we were recording was program income received. In that January 2009 integration with LOCKSS, what we did was, as part of the drawdown module, allow you to record a program income voucher. So then we had both sides of this puzzle. NSP came along. For most disaster recovery grantees, almost all of those funds were still just, for the most part, grants. We had very few program income activities. And so one of the things that's become apparent as the NSP program has evolved is that this was going to be one of the big things in the NSP program. So we went ahead and made some functionality changes in terms of program income management. So that one of the first purposes of that was to make sure that we build a system function that would help us comply to make sure that we're spending as much as possible program income first before program funds and grant funds are drawn down. So the next purpose was to create a way to identify funding agreements that says when a grantee has told local government or a subrecipient or a nonprofit that they're going to be able to retain and use program income. So we're going to go through that in a little bit of detail, and that is going to be under revolving loan funds under projects and program income accounts. So these are going to be very important for us in terms of setting these things up so that those rules regarding spending program income first work well for your grants. But one of the main purposes we had, again, was to prevent grantees from always having to manually adjust activity budgets and obligations over and over anytime that they're using program income instead of program funds. So one of the things that's become real apparent, since we're not like IDS where grantees can just make edits, folks were having to, since we were keeping the income stream so separate, folks were having to adjust too many times. So part of this was an effort to reduce your workload. So there's going to be a lot of work that's required up front to make sure this is all set up correctly, but hopefully in the long run it's going to mean less work in terms of always going in and making those adjustments. And the main reason for that is, not reason, the main avenue for that is, we're going to cover a little bit, is going to be about how activity budgets and obligations are including both program income and program funds now, instead of just program funds as they had in the past. So in terms of listing these, a lot of this PowerPoint started off basically with the fact sheet that we posted on the web, and also sent a link to when I sent out a little email announcement to grantees and to HUD staff in terms of what some of these changes are. So just listing these in general, the receipt function now, again, is going to replace program income being recorded on the quarterly report. Again, anything that was prior to the December 3rd release, it's the QPR amount received has been made into a receipt. So from now going forward, you're going to be creating receipts for program income instead of recording it on the QPR, and that will become, the QPR then will become, like other things, just a read-only field. As I mentioned just now, activity budgets and obligations will include program income. We're not going to ask you to identify how much program funds versus program income when you're doing an activity budget or obligation. It's just that we're going to need them to be bumped up so that you can use them interchangeably when you get to the draw stage. So in essence, they're going to become, the available amounts will become interactive between program income and program funds, and we'll show you a lot more detail about how those calculations will be made. It used to be that the program income calculations were only at the grant level, and program income was at the grant level, and program funds, grant funds, were at the activity level. Now the two work together. So some of the next things that are going to be very important will be for you to set up things called a revolving loan fund and a program income account. Revolving loan funds will be identified using the project screen, and then you'll still identify, like you have in the past, on your edit activity, which project an activity is assigned to. The program income account will work a little differently and a little simpler in that you'll create a program income account, and then you'll identify, which activities fall under that, and you'll be able to use responsible organization as part of the things to search and identify those activities. So the main impact of this, again, is going to be that DRGRs are going to require program income received in each RLF and in each program income account to be used before grant funds. The same rule is going to apply to anything outside of a revolving loan fund or program income account, and the term you're going to hear and you'll see in DRGR is called the general account. So general account just means it's not been assigned to a revolving loan fund, an activity, and it's not been assigned to a program income account. So again, just to show these in terms of like a little math rule and talk about the program income rule, in the edit activity screen, the edit action plan screen, which we'll show you in a second, you're going to actually, grantees will actually estimate the overall program income and revolving loan funds that they expect to use for a grant. And we're going to talk about what have we done as part of the transition, the data migration from Release 7.2 to Release 7.3. And so as part of that, what we did was take any amount of receipts that you already had for program income, and we went ahead and auto-populated that amount on that edit action plan page. So you didn't put those in, we put them in on your behalf, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about what you have to do to bump those up, because you'll need to go in and manually increase those to make sure that it's going to cover how much you need of program income, hopefully for the next couple of years. Same type of thing is going to go on project budgets, but where on the grant level you're going to identify explicitly what your program income is. On project budgets, it's going to include program income and revolving loan funds, but not specify. So we'll show you that screen. You're going to be bumping up the project budgets accordingly. Same thing happens to activity budgets and obligations. That should now, any of your activity budgets or obligations should include program income and grant funds. And so what we did was, and we'll talk about this in one of the future screens here that you're going to see, what we did was take, if you already did more draws than was accommodated by the budget, we did go ahead and bump up your obligations and activity budgets. The same thing is going to apply there. We're going to need you to go in and to make edits at each of these levels to make sure that it's going to accommodate any program income that you're going to want to spend on these activities. So again, the way I'd like you to really think about this again is there's three kind of very different buckets that work together. General account is for any program income that's been assigned on any activity that's not assigned to a project or an account. Those grant calculations would work exactly the same way, across, not exactly the same, sorry. Any activity, any program income received on any activity that's not assigned is going to have the program income spent before program funds. Project, using the RLF project, those math rules about spending program income would only apply to the activities assigned to that project. Same thing for a program income account. So if you've given the money to a city, if it's a state, and you've given money to a city and said you could spend your program income on other things, you'll be associating any activities you told the city, that you were going to allow them to spend program income onto those program income accounts. So those math rules would apply within each one. And once you start setting up projects and accounts, we are going to talk about it insulates and walls off those math rules within each of those buckets. So we talked a little bit about what were the changes that we made in your data. And so I want to go through in the next two slides what the nature of those changes were again, and then also what we're needing you to do as the next steps. And for the most part, what, again, we're going to have you do is, based on your projections on what you think you're going to need for program income or spend, we're going to need you to increase amounts in DRGR based on your estimates. And it shouldn't be just over the next 6 months. It should be over the life of the grant. Again, we mentioned we don't want you to have to go in and making adjustments to the action plan. So this is your time right now is to go look at what you're planning and then try to bump these things up. So the first things we're going to do, again, is create those program income accounts and revolving loan funds, assigning activities to them if the organizations you're funding can retain the program income. Anything else gets left in a general account. So we didn't do any data changes on that side. What we did, again, was create receipts where it says A, for everybody that has program income, we created a receipt for the amounts you listed on the program income received on your QPR. So if you look at the date, you'll see for receipts, you can create receipts in prior years, or not prior years, in prior quarters. And it will actually go ahead and change out your program income displayed on those QPRs. So those were QPRs, those receipts now are the data, and the amount showed as the program income received on the QPRs is actually a read-only field from now on. In terms of, again, the grant estimated program income, what we did was take a sum of all the program income you received on QPRs to date, and we made that estimated program income amount that shows on Edit Action Plan page, we made it equal the sum of all those program income received amounts you put in. But again, so if your grant is $2 million and you've already received $500,000, but you think over the next, we'll have put that $500,000 on that estimated program income on the Edit Action Plan. What we'll need to do, if you look through your records and think, based on this rate, we're going to do $3 million in program income over the next few years, then you're going to need to update that from $500,000 to $3 million so that you can accommodate the project budgets, the activity budgets, and the activity obligations, all those things that you're going to have to inflate to allow these things to operate interactively. So the next things, again, we changed again on our side was if we saw that your program income and your program funds draws that you've already made to date exceeded your obligations and budgets, we went ahead and changed your activity amount of D&E. We changed your activity budgets and obligations so that those budgets would reflect that you had that money available and that you were, that the budgets and obligations were increased. If we made those increases to budgets on activities, sometime that would have bumped up your project budgets. So again, what we did on our side was to say anytime we could see from the records that you spent more than these new budgets and obligations, we went ahead and increased those. Again, you're going to need to go in and look at, for a particular activity, what you think you're going to need to increase those activity budgets and obligations to. And then based on those, when you add those up, what do we need to increase the project budgets also to? So again, it's going to be a lot of work. Your best friend's going to be MicroStrategy reports to pull this out and then kind of give yourself a game plan in terms of what are those changes that we're going to be making. So now we're going to go through a few of the screens that we've been talking about and kind of overviewing. So if you've looked in your action plans so far, you see that at the very top, we've got the grant amount like we had before, but now you're going to see a new field with real data in it if you've got program income that has the estimated PI RL funds in it. And you'll see that total budget shows based on whatever you edit. If, again, here we saw that there was receipts of $5.6 million for a $91 million grant, and we made that data correction. And so if you think, again, that over the next couple of years that you're going to be spending $40 million, we need you to go in and put that $40 million here. Your total budget then will show $1 million, and then that will actually allow you to increase your project budgets and increase your activity budgets to those amounts. So you're not going to be able to increase activity budgets and project budgets unless you go ahead and inflate that amount right here. So what we're going to do, again, is as part of this data corrections that we need you to work on to reflect the new way DRGR works, we'll need you to put those in. And then, we just recommend that every once in a while, depending on how tightly you made those estimates, to go in and revisit to make sure that you're not bumping up against those ceilings of activity budgets and project budgets. For project budget changes, again, you're going to see how much at the grant level is available in terms of your estimated program income funds and what your total project budget is. But what's not going to change is, you're not going to specify in the project how much is program income versus grant funds. It'll be just a total amount that you will need to increase, just like you did. We'll need you to go in and create, based on probably your activity level, what you think those project budget changes would be. And then again, on a regular basis, go in and update those. Especially if you're seeing that you're earning way more program income than you thought. So the next few screens we're going to show you is just what does that receipt screen look like. The receipt screen is going to be something that folks can access if you have draw roles. If you have the create or approve draw role on the grantee side, you'll be able to create a receipt. And so you can see here, you're in the drawdown module, and then the links will show up now. Some of the new links that you've got are create receipt and search edit receipt. So this screen right here is the search for receipt screens, and you can see what program income account is it in. Again, if it hasn't been assigned, then it'll just list it as general account. You didn't create something called a general account. That just means it's an unassigned activity. If it's in a revolving loan fund, it'll show under a project. We don't have a flag here that shows revolving loan fund, but anything that's in a revolving loan fund or in a program income account would not say general account.
And Mark, this is Janine. Do you mind if we just go back 1 second? Just one thing I wanted to highlight for this. So many of you out there, grantees, will have many grantee receipts in here, such as this example, if you have past program income received and past QPR. So this is an example where during the data migration over the weekend, these receipts were created for you based on your past inputs that you put into the system. So this example shows you multiple grant receipt numbers that, again, the system did for you based on the 7.3 release, based on the numbers you put in per QPR, per activity. If you start creating more grant receipts because you get additional program income in, you would do so in the drawdown module as we see here, and it will show up as this test one showed up for you. So again, go in there and look around yourself of what grant receipts were created for you so you can just double check all that.
So one of the things about the receipts is that's a key concept is that you're not going to be recording the receipt or the program income. You're going to still continue to record it. It will be in the drawdown module now, but you're still going to be recording it at the activity level. So the key thing to remember is that we're going to show you how you would create a project and how you create a program income account, but you're still recording things at the activity level. So if you went in and realized you also, after you created a receipt, that you created it on the wrong activity, you can see when you go and search and edit receipts, you could go ahead and change the drop-down and change it from one activity on a grant to another. And so then if, say, you went in and changed this to an activity that was you created a program income account or you changed activities, what's going to happen on that prior page is instead of saying general account, if you're the state of Louisiana and you created a program income account for the city of New Orleans, changing activities information on the accounts, assigning activities to an account, a program income account or a revolving loan fund, or changing them across is going to change where on that search page, where does it display that the receipt is. So again, think of it as a grouping. Project's a grouping function, so is program income account. So, but you're going to continue to work at the activity level. That's the main place to remember. That's where it is. So again, as I mentioned, you have to have the ability to either draw or create or approve a draw to have a receipt function. It's a financial function, and it's in the drawdown module. So anybody should be able to, any grantee user or HUD user should be able to search receipts. You're just not going to be able to edit or create a receipt unless you have those draw roles. So again, just to reiterate a little bit, program income and revolving loan funds, PI accounts, we've got the general account, which is a pool of all program income receipted, but is not in any individual revolving loan or program income account. It just means it's on an unassigned activity. Revolving loan fund, this is something very specific. It is, you are creating one activity type. If it was regular CDBG, it could be economic development. For the most part here, it's housing, but one activity type where you're using loan repayments to fund new loans. So typically what you'll do is you'll capitalize it through your grant. So it could be you're creating a $1 million loan fund, and you're expecting to, over the next couple of years, to spend $750,000 of program income received. That is going to be set up on the project screen, and on the revolving loan fund, you would only want then the activities that belong on that revolving loan fund. So in some cases, you might have to pull activities off of an existing project, create a new one, and make sure that only those activities that are under the revolving loan fund are assigned to that project. So the next type, again, we've talked about is a program income account. It's a separate account where you will say for, probably by a responsible organization, if you've funded, if you're a state or a county and you funded a city, or if you're a city and you funded a nonprofit, if you're allowing these other organizations to retain their program income and use it on whatever activities they have, or even create program income only activities, any activity that that relationship applies to, through your funding agreements, that would be specified in that program income account. You'll create the account and you'll associate the activities with it. In essence, those revolving loan funds and program income accounts, I use the term walling off activities from the program income rules. So that way those math rules of spending program income accounts, spending program income first, would apply within the activities within each revolving loan fund, within each program income account, or if, again, if they're not assigned, then it would be across all activities. So in general, a grantee that's retaining program income, not retaining, a grantee that's asking all their program income to be returned, everything would be under the general account. And you wouldn't necessarily need to create those program income activities. So if you're real worried right now, about, program income, those program income requirements, one of the first things you're going to need to do is spend your as much time as you can real quickly, number one, to create those revolving loan fund and program income accounts, so that when you get draw requests from program funds from some other activity, that you've walled off all those activities that have the program income in them, and assign them to program income accounts and revolving loan funds that are, set up for them. So if you only have a few program income accounts, you wall them off, and then that will protect your other draws, your program fund draws, from having to have that first in, first out rule, for something that a subrecipient is allowed to retain that program income. So in terms of setting them up again, on revolving loan fund, it's going to be on the project screen. On program income account, it's program income screen. Both of these are going to be in the action plan module. So you'll see links now on the left-hand side if you're a grantee on creating these, same as always, creating a project and editing it. Then on the program income account, it'll be a new link that you'll see. So on the project screen, again, it hasn't changed much. What we've done is basically created a little checkbox that says revolving loans. So to create a project that's a revolving loan fund, all you do is go in, either create one or edit an existing one and hit that checkbox. Again, you just want to make sure that it only includes the single activity type and that it only includes those activities that are part of the revolving loan fund. So setting up a program income account, again, you're going to select the action plan module. If you're creating a new one, you're going to add program income account. It'll show up on the left. So you can see the old groupings are still there, view all, view action plan and download action plan. And then you've got projects. The program income accounts are grouped together with the projects now. So action plan, add program income. And then this is a little bit, if any of you have worked with the census tract screens, it's built a little bit like that. All you're doing is creating an account name. On the top, you're going to have available responsible organizations. It's just a filter for what activities display in the bottom screen. So in this case, with the state of Mississippi, you might have, organizations here, and you see, in this case, City of Ocean Springs. So one of the things, if you haven't cleaned up your activities, or if you've got multiple organizations that fall within a funding agreement, you might need to go down and look to make sure that someone didn't create an activity that, instead of saying City of Ocean Springs, it says Ocean Springs, or it says Ocean Springs Community Development Agency. So again, you're going to select on the left side on the top window available organizations, assign them, using the button in the middle. You can always remove them if you've added too many. And then the available activities will show versus selected. So in this case, you can see we've got a bunch of activities that have been assigned but we've said, oh, there's 2 activities here on the left that are not part of this funding agreement, so we're leaving them on the left. And again, you're going to have to hit save, and that's all it takes to set up a program income account. All those activities in that bottom right, the math rules for program income received and program income dispersed, and how they affect the availability of program income, they'll be calculated at the PI account level, and they will impact any of these activities, the ability to draw program funds. But again, you're walling them off. You're creating an account that says, I only want anything, the program funds and program income for Ocean Springs in this particular program income account. I don't want draws from other organizations affecting anything here. So if you have multiple ones, then you would set up one for each one of these. And you can see it's also, sorry, I didn't mention, it's within the program income accounts are specific to individual grants. If you're wanting to, once you've created the program income accounts, if you want to edit them, basically you're going to do like a lot of other things. You're going to search and then edit. So you'll search. In this case, this is one of our first program income accounts. This is instead of a mock-up like I do a lot of these screens. This is a real one. It's state of Indiana, and they get the gold star for going in and creating accounts. So we've got the edit screen that's just for that individual one is accessed just by hitting that edit link on the right-hand side. So now we're going to show you a few of the other screens. Again, the obligating screen, the same thing applies in kind of like the project. You're not changing the amount. You've just got, in terms of the way the screen works, we still have just a single obligation amount. The difference is now, again, that you're supposed to be including program income and program funds in the obligations, just like you are on the edit activity page. We don't have a screenshot of that. But the difference here you'll see on the screen is that if there's a total drawn amount, in the past you weren't able to reduce the obligation down past the amount you had drawn on grant funds. Now we're going to show the rule is you can't reduce it down past the total amount drawn, and you'll see a little just calculation here that shows what's the program funds drawn versus the program income drawn. So on the voucher page, in the past, one of the things you could see for program income, you would see, program funds, you'd be able to click up an available amount link, and it would say, here's how much grant funds has been drawn for an activity, here's how much the obligation is, and here's the available amount for grant funds. If you clicked on a program income line item in a draw, it would show you the same thing at the grant level. So what you're going to see now is that you'll see the assignment of what's the project or program income account. In this case, you can see, again, it's another unassigned activity. You're not going to be able to draw program funds on an individual activity if there are program income funds available on any account, any activity within the program income account, within a revolving loan fund, or if you've not assigned them, to a general account. So this is one of the places you're going to see the calculations displayed most in depth. And so in this case, you'll see that there's 0 funds available, in the column, row E, column program funds activity level available, there's 0 available. So the total budget on the right-hand side is $429 million. But you can see if you go to the program income account, there has been $5.6 million in receipts, only $4.9 million drawn within that program income account. So there is $731,000 available program income in the general account. So it will actually calculate that there's 0 available within this particular activity for draws. So one of the things we'll talk about in some of the other screens is, okay, well, that's not right, and it might be that you need to create other program income accounts or create, reassign receipts, things like that. So this will tell you, when you try to create a draw, how do things stand for that particular activity. On the quarterly report, again, as I mentioned, the program funds received now is going to be shown as a read-only field. We've regrouped the way things display here in terms of program funds drawn down and program income drawn down to say what's the total amount drawn down, so that they're kind of grouped a little bit more towards the obligations and the budget. So one of the things we've already heard from a couple of grantees, I think Mississippi was the first one to notice that we've got some errors already on the QPR pages in terms of the financial data, and that's an error in how DRGR was recoded when they re-engineered this page. So we are going to have, we already know probably in the next week or so, a release that will change. And again, that's not that your data is incorrect on the data side, it's that the way that QPR is displaying the data is wrong. So it's a known error. Just kind of look at, make sure, and you're, depending on right now on the MicroStrategy reports, but we should have that corrected before the end of the quarter. So in terms of the next steps, we wanted to talk through some kind of basic scenarios. The simplest scenario in terms of what actions we're going to need grantees to work on is if that all the program income is returned to a grantee and you have no need to establish any revolving loan fund or program income account. So in that case, all activities fall under the general account. In that case, what we're going to need you to do again is, verify your grant, the estimated program income and the project budgets, and then update your activity budgets and obligations. So that's pretty much what you're going to need to do. And then potentially, clean up things like your receipts if they're recorded on the wrong, things like that. But that's going to be the least amount of work. The next one group B is what we expect a lot of the grantees to fall under. You've got program income accounts, you've got funding agreements that actually have those, but you don't have any revolving loan funds. In that case, you're going to, verify the grant estimated program income. You're going to create your project budgets. You will create program income accounts, and you'll still update activity budgets and obligations. So that's where we expect a lot of the NSP grantees to fall. The final group is C. It's more of a mix, and that's, again, where somebody might have a revolving loan fund for one type of activity, but you also allow folks to retain program income. So an activity can't fall under a revolving loan fund project and a program income account. So in terms of staging, one of the things you're going to want to think about is that you'll want to assign activities to revolving loan fund projects before you go in and create those program income accounts. So in that case, it's going to be a little bit more work, but again, we don't expect a whole lot of revolving loan funds. Again, if you think you have those, make sure to contact your CPD rep. We can talk to you through DRGR help. But for the most part, we're expecting almost all of the things to be probably set up through program income accounts. So there's just going to be a little bit more upfront analysis that you'll need to do if you are going to do revolving loan funds plus program income accounts.
Hey, Mark?
Yes, Janine.
I just wanted to jump in on that scenario. So the key here for you guys as grantees out there is that you will fall into one of these three scenarios. If you're outside of that, let's talk about it. But the vast, vast, vast majority, if not all, will fall into one of these three scenarios. So please look at that. If you're more on the data end of that and are not positive exactly how that works under your grant, please go to whomever runs the program and sit down with them so that you are understanding what the program is and then figure out your scenario. Then you go into DRGR and figure out what needs to happen in DRGR. So it's really important you understand what your program looks like and then cross-reference that and how and what the actions are needed to then clean up this data.
Yeah, let me clarify one thing. For the most part, the reason we built this out a little bit more, especially is the NSP grantees. So there's going to be plenty of disaster grantees that don't have program income. Disaster grants are, the bread and butter is that they give money out as grants. So there's a very few program income disaster grantees. So if you are a disaster grantee and you have no program income, you don't need to take any of these actions. This is only for folks that have program income or revolving loan funds. And then you, again, as Janine said, if you have any of that, you should fit in one of these scenarios. And so the reason we've kind of broken this out this way is that, again, those math rules that you'll see, those available amount calculations, they're calculated within a revolving loan fund, within a program income account, and if you're not in one of those, then they fall under the general account. So in terms of, we've talked a bit about how we're going to need you to bump up the budgets, the obligations, things like that. So I wanted to talk through some of the next steps, though. If we talked about, like, on the project, it could be that you've got the project by, a project that includes a revolving loan fund, but it has maybe instead of just 2 activities, maybe LMMH, housing, and then, rehab or whatever, and LH25, that it has 8 activities. And so it could be that you have to create another project, reassign those 2 RLF activities to a new RLF project. It could be that you've been recording your program income. You said, oh, gosh, I'm just going to put it on this general program income activity. So you'll have to think in terms of some of these. You might need to be reassigning your activities across RLFs and project PI accounts. You might need to edit receipts. If you didn't record them on the right activity, you'll need to think, gosh, do I need to change my receipt and assign it to a different activity? It wasn't recorded correctly. It could be that the PI draws weren't recorded correctly across activities. So before we get into next screens, which are going to be available amount calculations, we want us to kind of just think, you'll see these things, you'll be able to run reports, but then you just need to think, what are the steps we need to take other than increasing those budgets and obligations? What are some of the other possible steps you might need to do? And again, I'm in the process of authoring a lot of the reports. There's 2 or 3 program income reports that have been added to the financial section in MicroStrategy, but I'm in the process of adding several others. And so I'll send out an email once we get a bigger set of them done, and we'll probably do a little fact sheet on that also. But you can print out these available balances sheets, or again, pull off these reports, and then that'll give you kind of like, okay, here's where I'm at, and I see I need to adjust the following things. So I do have a receipt report that's been authored, and I think I have one now for program income accounts. It just summarizes what's the program income received versus the program income dispersed and what's the available balance. If you haven't created a program income account, you won't see any data in that report. It's not going to show anything for the general account. So that's the biggest downfall of that report, and I'm in the process of seeing if we can get that report reauthored so that it shows, all the activities. The PI account, even the general account. It won't say general account, but it'll just show like a blank there. So we showed you the screen a little bit again, a few slides back, but we're going to kind of dive down into this a little bit more. And so this first screen is just going to say, again, trying to emphasize that program income available is calculated at the revolving loan fund, at the PI account level, or this general account. Those totals are going to show on the left side. In this slide, it's all shown in red. On the right side shows 3 columns. It shows what are my program funds at the activity level, what's my program income at the activity level, and then what are the all funds at the activity level. So you can see from this, there's no budget and obligation, distinction between program funds and program income at the activity level. You can see receipts show at the activity level. They also show at the program income account level. The amount drawn shows across the board, and then the amount available. So in one of the future slides, we're going to actually go through and walk you through, I think, 2 real-world scenarios of how do you make those calculations. So the main thing I wanted to kind of show and highlight here is that you're going to look for the project or the program income account. The numbers here on that left will be specific across activities. It's not specific to this one activity. The program income math rules are going to be applied, and those will show in that left-hand column. So, Janine, do you want to jump into this one? Is this the new one you've done, right?
Yeah, happy to, Mark. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about, as Mark gave, actually, I think we have 3 scenarios. We have 2 scenarios showing the different budgets that you'll see, and then we also have kind of looking at the grant overall. So this is a scenario just to walk you through how do you figure out what is your available balance to draw, and how do you understand where it's coming from. Is it coming from your program income or your program funds? And as always, nothing changed in the sense that you still draw at the activity level. So that's what we're going to be analyzing and looking at. So for this example, in the end, what I'm going to get you guys to is that there's $132,000 plus some change to draw, and that program income actually must be drawn first, and that there is the available balance of the $132 to draw from. from PI, and so that's what you'll be drawing from. So let me walk through this for people. How did I figure that out? So first, what we're going to do is look at the program income account level. So you see the box number 1. I'm going to step-by-step through this, and then Mark's going to grab the other example and step-by-step through that. So this is an example, and this actually a scenario I know about, so I'll give you the example. It's actually there's all the program income is coming back to the grantee, so this is the general account we're talking about. And there's $5.6 million that have been received in this general account. Over 4.9 have been drawn, so there's an available balance of $731,000 plus change to use of program income. However, you can't just go in there and draw $731,000 from this particular activity that we're analyzing. So why? Let's think through that. Let's walk through that and also figure this out a little bit more. So first of all, I want to figure out what's been drawn total from this activity. And again, total draws are program funds that have been drawn plus program income that has been drawn. So if you see step 2, we're first analyzing what has been drawn. And so program funds, there's been over $296,000 that has been drawn from the program funds. Nothing to date has been drawn from the program income fund. So our total draws in the right-hand column, the way right-hand column, under all funds activity levels, it shows us the total draws. Those are $296,771. Then we also have to figure out kind of what is the budget for this activity and what's been obligated and drawn. So in this activity, the entire budget, I'm going to stop here for a second, and let's remember, as Mark said earlier, we now have a difference in this new data release that your total budget at the activity level is their program funds plus any program income that needs to be budgeted for this activity, your estimation of program income. So the total budget is $429,337.55, and they fully obligated that entire amount as well. With the total draw of $296,771 that we figured out in step 2, we have a remainder of $132,000 available, $132,000 plus some change available for this activity level. And right now, since the program income account level that is associated with is the general account, that's $731,832.66, we have to take from that first. Okay, so therefore we can grab as much as $132,566.55, which is available. We can't do more because the activity level is only budgeted and obligated at $429,337, and you've already drawn $296,771. Okay, so let's walk through that again. So we have total program income available from the general account is $731,832.66. The total drawn of this activity, the program funds plus the program income, is $296,771. Then we try to figure out what's actually available for this activity, which is the budget. You look at your budget, then you look at your obligated minus your drawn, the $429 minus the $296, and you get the $132,566. And then you need to figure out, can I take from my program funds or my program income? Because there is, of your total amount, the $132,566 that's available overall in your activity, you can only take from program income because there's an available balance of $731,832.66 as of right now. Mark, why don't I hand it off and you give the other example?
Yeah, so, I mean, again, the biggest takeaway from this is that before the program income never affected, this particular activity potentially. Now it does. So, yeah, there's money sitting in that program income account, and it's just not going to be able to draw, and this is a requirement. And so, again, that's one of the reasons we've done this. See, so the other example is a little bit different. The other one is the general account, and you could tell there was no program income here, but those other activities affected it. In this case, you can see there, our final goal, 490, says there is program funds available. We're going to walk you through this calculation. So again, in this one, the first thing is that however much activities that we've had, you can see that there was $350,000 in receipts across this particular program income account, or it also applies again to a revolving loan fund, just to be real clear about that. So there's been program income draws of $210,000 to date. that means there's a program income balance of $140,000 within this program income account. So in this case, let's say, it's one account and there's 4 activities in it. So again, we're going to go across the board on row D and see what are the total draws that we've got. So we've had program fund draws of $1.75 million. We've had program income drawn on this of $120,000 of those 4 activities in the program income out of the $210,000 was for this particular activity. The total draws then for this activity are $1.87 million. So then we're going to use that total drawn, subtract that from the total obligated to come up with what's my total available balance for this activity. So that's, again, step 3. And so you're going to subtract the 187 from the 2.5 million, gives you $630,000. So then we're going to use that total available at the activity level, of $630,000. Go and check. We've got that $140,000 of program income available. So we're going to reduce that from the $630,000. That leaves you that you can do $490,000 of program fund draws for this activity. So if you're creating a voucher, you've got that amount available. But you're going to have to see that draw would obviously the draw when you're creating it. If you're wanting to do the full amount, you're going to have to do at least the $140,000 from the program income, but you can create a draw that includes both of them at the same time. Anything else on that screen, Janine?
No, but we're happy to take questions on that too when we get to the Q&A.
So what we've done is now this is a little harder to read, but just try to do a little scenario. So remember we talked about that scenario C, which was the most complicated. This is just a little kind of mock-up to show, like, if you're running a MicroStrategy report, we're going to have a program income. It will show right but available, when you're showing the account level. But program income received and dispersed, again, it really affects at the program income account, the revolving loan fund account, or general account. So in this case, you can see there, the green is we've set up program income account 1 for City A. We've set up program income account 2 for City B. And so both City A and City B get to retain their program income. There's also the state. This is a state grantee. The state has 1 revolving loan fund and administered by the Housing Authority. And, so I've got a wrong example. It shouldn't say Market Stabilization Administration, but it would be, again, like Housing Rehab, LH25, Housing Rehab, LMMI. So there's a revolving loan fund, and then City B and City D fall under the general account. The state is saying you've got to return your funds. So when we've added everything up, budgeted, obligated, grant funds dispersed, program income received and dispersed, what you see on program income account 1 is that the City A must draw their program income balance first of $63,000 before they can draw program funds. Because they've got City A across their activities, $87,000 of program income received and only $23,000, $23.9 of program income dispersed. City C has got only $7,800 in program income across their activities, and they've spent it. So they drew it on they received it on 1 activity, they drew it across 2. They can go straight into program funds and draw funds. Same thing applies on the revolving loan fund. It looks like we've got $1.5 million received, $720 dispersed. So that means they've got to draw first out of that $833 program income on those revolving loan funds. And then City B and City D is you also got to balance across them. So if you look at City B, they've went ahead and spent their program income that they received, but then City D has not spent it. So if City B makes a draw request for program funds, the program income that's been recorded on City D is going to impact the ability of the state to draw for City B, because there's outstanding program income from one of the things on the general account. Anything else on that one, Janine?
Maybe just to put context around that, Mark, I was just going to let grantees know that this is probably a grantee that has one of the most complex scenarios here. So we just wanted to make sure you guys kind of saw a real complex one where the grantee programmatically has decided, for example, here 2 cities are not retaining their program income. They return it to the city, which is City B and City D. City A gets to keep their program income. City C keeps their program income. And then there's also an RLF with the State Housing Authority. So this is a pretty complex example, but one that maybe a state might have, for example, or something else. So look at it and understand it enough, but also understand that your community might decide not to do something as complex.
So one of the reasons I put this in here was that, when we looked at these prior screens, these are within each, program income account, within each RLF, and you saw that it showed up on that drawdown available amounts page. What I was hoping to kind of show in this screen is that if you're wanting to figure out how you're going to stage these changes, and figure out where your program income accounts are, run one of your cumulative financial reports, and then, that has projects on it, responsible organization, and then, export it as an Excel sheet, and then kind of come up with a game plan of your own to say, hey, I'm going to add a column that says PI account or revolving loan fund, and you could go ahead and assign them, come up with what you think the available balance calculations are before you start creating your PI accounts and revolving loan funds. So pull a spreadsheet, pull a report, come up with a game plan, because then, again, it's going to allow you to say, gosh, you know what, I recorded program income on the wrong activity here, or, I need to reassign something. But it should give you, run a report, see where you're at, and then you're also going to use this potentially then when you're going to say, hey, I know I'm going to increase my program income received, I'm going to bump those up. So I'm going to need to bump up my budgets and obligations. So it's kind of hard to think through, all the data that you're analyzing ahead of time. So use a report, a MicroStrategy report, to come up with, how you're going to assign those activities to program income accounts and revolving loan funds, whether or not you're going to leave them on general account, and then where do you think you're going to need to beef stuff up. Just overwrite your data and use that as a game plan so that when you're talking, and sharing tasks across staff, you'll be able to say, whether you're doing it or whether you're assigning it to different team members, here's what we're going to want this to look like. So you come up with a report ahead of time, try to make as many of the changes as you can, and then when you go back in, you can run some of the new reports that do show program income accounts, revolving loan funds, and things like that to, once you've made changes, to say, okay, where am I at? How much further do I need to go? And if you have a question, this is another good spot to pull a report like this and send it to your CPD rep, or if you're going to have to depend on the help desk for something, send us a spreadsheet with these proposed organizations and tell us what is it that you think your stumbling blocks are going to be. What are your particular issues? So instead of asking us general questions, it might really help for you to pull the report and give us something concrete to work with, so we can actually work through, where do we think the numbers, and the math stumbling blocks are going to be for you. So Janine, I think this is one of your slides. You want to jump here?
Yeah, why don't we just take a couple of seconds? I know we have some questions. So we just wanted to think through for grantees if some common problems that might be out there while you're trying to go through all of this work. As Mark said, you're pulling a report and analyzing if you guys have program income accounts or LS, what's the grouping and the staging. So here's if a grantee entered PI received in past QPRs under the wrong activity, okay? So this is if, for example, you were just receiving program income wherever in a QPR. You didn't really look at which activity it needed to be under, or you put it in the wrong. You may have difficulties in drawing down funds if they are identified either in your scenario B or C, i.e. that's those scenarios where you have to create your program income or RLF accounts, okay? So you've got to think through and think some of the solutions that may apply is you can edit the new receipts, okay? Those are the receipts that were created for you guys based on the data migration this weekend. They were created from the past QPRs, and you can go into those receipts and you can edit those. Again, it's in the drawdown module. And Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, you can edit them by any user withdrawal rights. Is that correct?
Yeah, it has to be user withdrawal rights, but it can be somebody that's a create or approve role.
Great. So that's one way. If you've entered PI received wrong in the past and it's going to hurt you in drawing down funds, you can go ahead and edit those. Another solution is let's make sure you're creating those RLF and PI accounts correctly. And so it might be a wrong activity, but it might not affect you because it was still under the same responsible organization. So just make sure you're analyzing how you're setting up your RLF or PI accounts. And then something else you might need to do is look and increase, decrease your projects and activity budgets as needed. Because remember now, going forward, your project and activity budgets are inclusive of program funds plus program income. Also includes your activity obligations are also inclusive of program funds plus program income. So you may need to also look and evaluate what those budgets say and how you need to increase or decrease if you've receipted some of your program income incorrectly in the past.
So if I can, I think the real thing to think about more than anything else short term is pull a report. Again, if you're really worried about program income affecting your ability to draw grant funds, and you need a real, instead of getting overwhelmed by I've got to do this full-on analysis and make all these changes. If there's a short-term issue of you wanting to pull program funds, the quickest thing for you to do would be to pull a program income report that shows program income received and dispersed, and figure out before anything else, creating those program income accounts. So the most value you will have, for all these solutions, these are all very important things. But I think, since most of the things aren't going to be revolving loan funds, the biggest thing, which is not going to take a whole lot of time, would be to, if you're worried about drawing grant funds, to set up PI accounts super quick. And then, again, go back in, because that should, again, wall off that program income from activities that should have no relationship to it. So I really want to emphasize, first and foremost, that's the first task here is going to be creating those accounts, and then go back, do this analysis, and start bumping things up, like we talked about at the different levels. Sorry, Janine, go ahead.
No, that's great. And I'm actually looking at the time. I'm thinking, why don't we jump and get into some of the Q&As, if that sounds good, so we can start to answer some folks' questions. Vinny, can you remind people how to do questions for us?
Sure, Janine. You can, of course, ask your question by way of live meeting. On the top of your browser, there should be a Q&A button, so you can just type in your question that way, and we will ask the questions anonymously. You can also ask your question via the phone, so you can hit *1 to get into the queue, and as questions are being answered, if your question has already been asked, you can get out of the queue by pressing *2. So I guess we'll take questions now.
Great, and some of the questions I'm seeing already, and Vinny, I'm going to ask you also to answer this for folks, is they're asking kind of where do I get the materials from today, when can I get the audio version, et cetera, if you can help people understand where they can go to find this information.
Sure. If you want a copy of the slides now, you can actually, on the earlier listserv, the Join Now listserv right before the webinar, there was a link to where you can get the PowerPoint slides. So they're already posted in there. If you want the recording with the audio and the slides, those will be posted to the Learning Center within the next day or two. And on this here, the links, the way to find all the resources are through the Learning Center. And so that's the third link from the top. So that's where you look.
Great, thanks. We have a lot of questions coming in, so I'm going to do my best to get through them, but also I might be consolidating a few of them together so we try to maximize how much time we have. So we get a couple questions here, Mark, that have to do with the program income, that 10% that a grantee may use of their program income for admin. And so they're trying to understand the new release, with the new release, can you distinguish the 10% of the program admin for program income for admin, so that no more than 10% is drawn from program income, so you can save that for admin, i.e. can you wall that off? And they're trying to understand that a little bit more. Can you provide any answers there?
Well, and I think that's one of the ones that, we've heard about, after we designed this. So, I mean, I think that, normally we do talk about, that you always record program income where it's generated. But since we've got these PI accounts and the revolving loan funds, I think that's going to be one of the ones we're going to have to post like an FAQ on because, you know, if they're pulling it out, then we're definitely going to have to probably record it outside the particular ones. So, but I want to defer on that one. We'll try to issue probably an FAQ on that, you know, because I want to make sure that, you know, what we're responding, you know, is kind of making sure we meet the policy needs and the system needs. So, but my guess is, again, I think that it's going to end up having to be those kind of the ones that are pulled out for that purpose. We're going to have to record them differently.
Great. So I'll write that down. We'll make sure we, again, send that out via FAQ and other resources so that people can get an answer to how that 10% admin will work for more for a policy perspective, as Mark said.
Yeah, because in general, I've been saying don't record it. You know, always record it when you do receive it. But in order to use this the way we built it out, I think we're definitely going to have to think through that one.
Great. So another question came in. It's a real-life scenario, and I think this is a great question. So let me throw it out. So a grantee currently has 2 reimbursement requests ready to be processed. Will the new system let us process the request, or do we need to create the new accounts first? And says currently our grantees maintain the program income and expend it prior to seeking reimbursement of program funds.
So I guess the answer to that one would depend on, you know, if they're, you know, it's kind of hard to tell from that question whether or not the program income is actually being recorded in DRGR. Because if it is, then if it's being dispersed first, then it shouldn't have an impact. But if there's any PI balances and you're trying to draw down grant funds, you're going to have to draw that program income first. So, again, this is where if there's not a program income account set up, and this is maybe some subrecipient or local government that doesn't have any PI, but you have it recorded somewhere else, you are going to have to make sure that, again, it's walled off by those PI accounts. Like I said, I think the first step is creating those PI accounts. So the main thing to say whether or not it's going to impact you is run that program income report, see if you've got available balances, and see what you might need to do really quickly to wall off any available balances. If there is that you know, funding agreement that says someone else is able to retain it, you're going to have to set up those program accounts really quickly if there's balances from one activity that's going to affect another.
Another question we have here is, and we mentioned a couple times, is what is the name of the report that we keep talking about to see what program income they've received?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's like admin report, not admin, financial report. Program income shows on a few different reports. And I think it's, hold on, let me see if I've got it real handy.
It's either like 5A or 7A, I think.
Sorry, I actually have to have a list of the reports. Let me look real quick. The program income ones we've got some that are 5A is the, you know, one. I've just added a new report that's called Financial Report 5C that shows receipts. I've added a report called 5D that is Financial Report 5D that is program income accounts. And so basically it's the Financial Report 5 series.
Great, thank you.
So, and we'll be adding more, you know, on that Financial Report 5 series as we get some of the metrics working.
The other questions we have going, do you obligate funds prior to receiving program income? I understand that we are to increase our budgets and obligations to account for program income, but obligations really should only be recorded when there is an actual obligation, not a planned or expected obligation.
But I guess this one's kind of a hard one to answer because what we'll have to do is, again, you're going to have to revisit to look at those. The obligations should meet the legal definitions, you know, the policy definitions. But the main thing that we could not do, you know, in DRGR is to know whether or not you're allowing someone to use program income instead of grant funds. So it could be that, you know, a particular activity has a $500,000 budget and that's all there ever is. So if they're using, you know, the total budget's not changed from what you already had there, you're not going to change your obligations. Again, you'll bump up things like the budgets, you know, immediately if you do think they're going to have additional revenue that's going to be, you know, program income spent on an activity. So then, yeah, you would wait to the program income obligations to the point where you've met that legal definition. But you don't want to bump up, that you haven't even increased your budgets. So, you might hold off, like you're saying, to update the obligations to the correct time. But definitely you're going to want to at least, at minimum, go look at the estimated program income first at the grant level, the project budgets, and those activity budgets to make sure you bump them up in advance of needing the funds. Because the last thing you're going to want to do is go do a drawdown, and you're going to have to go make a ton of adjustments, at the grant level and the project level just to accommodate it.
So this is a grantee trying to understand still this program income account. So is the program income account level the sum of all program income received for the full grant or only for the member organization that collected it?
Well, it would be, can I move the slides back up?
Yes, please.
So I think, the way the question's worded is a little off in terms of it's within each one. So, I mean, again, this is one that shows the program income accounts. A program income account it's not a sum of all organizations. It's a sum of all the activities for an organization for a funding agreement that says they're going to be able to retain program income. So, again, on this screen, Ocean Spring program income account would have whatever activities under Ocean Spring. So if you're a state and you have 20 grantees, but you only allow 7 of them to retain program income, you're going to have 7 program income accounts. You're making all the rest of them go back, then you're not creating program income accounts for them. You're only creating those program income accounts for organizations that can retain their program income. Does that answer it?
I think we got there, yeah.
Okay.
Here's a question that actually might be more for David, so just throwing this out to both of you guys, though. David, I think you're still on.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. And so this is really about, do grantees get to keep program income once the grant period ends, or does it have to be returned?
No, we've said that program income can continue to be used for NSP-eligible activities, but there'll be more specific guidelines laid out in the closeout notice that we're still working on.
Thank you. Operator, I know we have a lot of questions still being written in, but let's see if we have any on the phone. Do we have some folks on the phone?
We have a couple questions on the phone. Let's go first to John.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, say for instance we have Habitat for Humanity as a developer carrying out a couple of projects for us. Now, because any program income that generates would never come back to us, Habitat is using it to continue their housing efforts. Is there any real need to record that in DRGR at all?
Thanks, John and Mark here. David, jump in here. I just want to clarify one thing, John. When you say Habitat is a developer, we want to clarify, are they capital D, big letter developer, not a subrecipient? Because that would then change what this funding is. If it's a developer, it's not program income then.
Yeah, okay, good point. I guess they're more of a subrecipient.
Yeah, because there's different groups out there that carry out development functions, right? But from a technical standpoint, under the NSP rules and regulations, they either fit in one of those two buckets, a subrecipient or a developer, right? If they're a subrecipient, then yes, you'd consider those funds that they are receiving to be program income. Now, even if those funds are not coming back to you, the grantee, right, you're letting them keep it to carry out other NSP-eligible activities. It's still program income, in which case I think it would need to be recorded in DRGR.
It needs to be recorded because that way we know, again, that allows the HUD staff to review, is it being spent on an eligible activity?
Right.
So, yeah, anything, that's where it's real important, like they were talking about, is making that distinction. But we definitely need anything that qualifies as program income, whether or not it's coming back to the grantee or not, it should be in DRGR. So, but that would be an example of one that would have that would fall under a program income account, because you wouldn't want the money that they're spending, to adversely impact the ability for any other subrecipient you funded to draw against.
But keep in mind that those funds, they typically finance the house to the end user, so those funds trickle back to them, a couple $100 a month, $400 a month, whatever.
Right.
So
you would have an oversight responsibility. They would have to send you regular updates on quarterly updates on what they're receiving, and you would then input that into DRGR.
So that actually brings up a good point, because to date it's always been quarterly. So we've moved to an IDS thing where it's transaction-based, not quarterly.
Okay. Sorry.
But that brings up a great point of, how often do you record it? Because I don't know that there's any frequency requirement, certainly not from a system perspective. So, but you certainly need to record it, at a certain point. Come up with, I guess, a judgment call between you and the CPD rep on, and then check any policies of how often does it need to be recorded, because that's a great point.
Yeah. I believe that the notice says that it's quarterly.
Okay.
Right? But to the extent that the volume may be higher, you may want to impose a more stricter rule so that you can keep a closer watch on that.
Yeah. So it's going to be, based on quarterly at minimum, but then, you don't want to do it too much where you're having to record tiny amounts.
Right.
Maybe we'll keep going. Operator, is there another question? Thanks so much, John.
We'll go next to Blair.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. In the old system, when you had an activity and you spent all your grant funds and your program you used your program income for that activity on another activity, you would have to rebudget in order to be able to use that program income for that activity. Does that make sense?
But yeah, that's what we're trying to avoid is, depending, for you not to have to re-budget all the time.
Okay, so in the new program, it won't require you to re-budget anymore.
That's one of the big reasons we, built it. Number one, we wanted to try to make sure that people are complying with the requirement. But the other one was people were having to adjust it all the time. So the key question you're going to have to ask yourself again is, are they going to be able to retain it? And if so, that means you need to project ahead of time what that overarching budget is. You would have increased the total amount, if you haven't already set it up that way, you would need to increase it at one time and think how much do we think the total budget would be with program income. So you would increase the amount. But if they're using the program income instead of the grant funds and their overall budget for that activity is not going to change, you're not going to have to reduce and peel off that grant funds anymore. So it's that second scenario, where it should be reducing the amount of work where you're freeing up money for other activities. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I'm guessing it'll make more sense when I actually do it in the system.
But that's where I would ask, what I started saying, pull off one of those spreadsheets.
Okay.
And try to think, based on your volume you've had to date of program income in, where do you need to bump up your budgets, for ones that they're going to continue to use money on those activities. So, that would be the best way to know, say, hey, these ones I know they're using it for the same activity. These other ones, they're using it for new activities, so we'll make those when those activities come in. It's the ones that they're going to increase the amounts that you will need to bump up now, and try to do it as much as possible to come up with a really good projection that you're only doing it once if possible and not having to do it over and over and over.
Okay.
So in essence, you're estimating in a longer-term projection than doing these short-term bumps.
Yeah.
Mark, is that what you're talking through?
Yeah, and because again, the main thing we're changing here is that you shouldn't have to reduce grant budgets and obligations to move money around.
So if we had already been rebudgeting should we, before we do this next quarterly report, should we kind of like go back to our original budget to show?
I wouldn't go back to any original budget. What I would do is spreadsheet, pull a report, see where you're at, and figure out, based on, because if you pull a cumulative financial report that includes grant funds and program income, then you can, program income received and program income dispersed, then try to come through and figure out which ones, like I said, that you're going to, they keep getting money in and they keep increasing. And those are the ones you want to target to increase. The ones you should be able to leave alone now are the ones where you're taking money out of them, to move to new activities. So, but you pull a spreadsheet and try to figure out, where you're at.
Okay.
To give yourself a game plan of how you need to approach your edits.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And another question online to the operator?
We do. We'll go next to Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi. I'm calling from the state of California, and so we have a lot of activities going on. But what I'm curious to know is when you're talking about setting up a project, we have 5 projects already, and so that's each one is part of our original grant. So when you're talking about setting up a project for PI, and then from that, setting up an activity of PI?
No.
Okay. I knew I was getting something wrong. Okay.
Great question, though. Let's clarify that for sure.
That's one of the most confusing aspects of this. So, Lynn, do you have any loan funds, or is it all just PI?
All PI.
Okay. So if it's loan funds, you would be working on a project level. But if you only have PI, you don't need to touch your projects. You leave them alone.
Okay, great.
So what you're going to do is go look up, run a report again that shows responsible organization, activity level report, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, that'll have something that I would focus on, one of the reports that has the responsible organization on it, because usually it's by responsible organization you're allowing them to retain income, right?
Right.
Do you require them to send it all back to you, or do they get to use it for the other things?
They get to use it and then report on their either a funds request or the PI report how they spent it.
Okay, so how many of those, of the grantees do you have?
We have 59. And
59. So you probably end up with 59 program income accounts. So you go into the action plan screen.
Okay.
See a link that says create a PI account. And all you're going to do is use that, double check, like I covered early on, to make sure that all the activities are there. So give me an example of one.
We would have acquisition, rehab, disposition.
One of the grantees that you fund.
The city of Atwater.
So city of Atwater, you need to make sure, you'll see responsible organization again. You might see city of Atwater, you might see Atwater, you might see Atwater CDC under the responsible organization. Just remember at the top of the screen, what we show on the screen right now, is that, they might not all be under the city of Atwater. So you're going to go in and type in Atwater, program income account, right?
Okay.
You'll select any organization that that falls under that funding agreement.
Okay.
And use that then, once you hit assign org, it'll refresh the available activities. And then if it's all the activities, you're just going to assign them all over to selected activities and hit save. If there, have a few that aren't part of the, the agreement, you'd leave them over there on the left side.
Okay, because all of ours are by activity and city or county specific.
Right. So, that's where you have to look at is for those funding agreements, which ones do you want to set up pots for?
Okay.
So, again, if you've got 59 and say they fund every single thing under there, they can do whatever they want with their program income, you're going to create 59 and you'll just move all the activities over.
Okay.
And then you're not going to have to touch the project screen at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where the way we built it out was that we were under instructions to go ahead and create revolving loan fund using the project screen. So we've set that up a little bit differently, but that's why I asked that question of, are any of these loan funds?
No.
And I don't expect a lot of NSP grantees will be using loan funds. So for the most part, everybody's not going to touch the project screen. You're just going to go in and set up these PI accounts.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lynn.
Great. And maybe one of the reiteration there is for those that do have their sub-grantees, the recipients retaining the program income, that they are still responsible for first in, first out, and the grantee's responsibility is to do oversight of that subrecipient, that they are doing first in, first out. So it's not enough just to make sure that they're not requesting program funds, but you'll want to get reports, and again, quarterly is the request of what this grantee has received, and then what also they have drawn down. And so that's what you'll be entering into the system.
Yeah, so one of the things that's a big change, mentally, I guess, for folks is that if someone's funded an activity that was only program income before, there wasn't really a way to show that. So, it was a little hard. You'd have to set up a $0 grant fund budget and then just report program income disbursements on it. So now you'll set up a budget. That's just a total budget, but you'll be able to kind of report a little easier, hopefully, on those if there's any activities that are PI only. Otherwise, it's just going to be you're adding, again, the PI funds, a disbursement to an existing activity. So, and then if you're doing additional accomplishments based on that program income, don't forget to report those. It's not just the financial side. It is a performance side, too. We would want to know that you've, made, 4 more loans and helped 4 more households.
Great. And why don't I take one more question, operator on the phone, and then we'll get back to the write-in?
We currently have no further questions on the phone.
Okay, great. We've got a lot of write-ins, so we'll keep moving here. So someone asked, can we go back and make PI receipt corrections to past QPRs, and what is involved in that? Can we go over that again, Mark?
Yeah, so that is actually, a pretty simple process. Again, the main issue is, oops, were we both clicking up at the same time? Oops, am I going the wrong way here, I think, right?
Yeah. Do you want the Add Edit PI receipt screen?
Yeah, right here. So, in the past, that would have been a problem because you had to go back and unapprove a QPR, right? And so, to change a amount received, or you'd have to do a prior period correction. So as long as the user has the ability to create a draw or approve a draw, all you do is go into the drawdown module, search, use the search screen. I think it's one more up, is it? Use that search link. Over here, it says Search Edit Receipt on the top left. Put in your search terms, and then you'll see it, and you'll click Edit. So once you see it, you can narrow down your searches. I think it's got activity number and responsible organization, things like that. So you find it, so if it was Alaqua County, you're going to go to the right here and just hit Edit. And then it's as simple as, changing the receipt date. If there's a receipt date difference, so whatever QPR it's assigned to is going to be based on what date you put in that receipt. So you can change the dollar amount. So it's not like the revised voucher where you can split them. You're basically going to have to just change the amount, but it will change the prior QPRs.
And Mark, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the one time that it's going to be difficult to change the amount to less than what you did before is if that activity has already been fully dispersed. You cannot go in and decrease that receipt.
Yeah, and
inherently you can't decrease it less than you've already spent. And so what I'm saying is you've already drawn the entire budget, including the program income receipts that you put towards that activity, and therefore you cannot decrease this program income receipt. You'd have to.
Yeah, so a lot of the math rules are going to continue to apply, but we've got these new screens. So yeah, you should, in that situation, you should throw an error message that says something to the effect of, sorry, you can't reduce this amount because, you got this much in draws, if it's working the way it's supposed to be designed. The same thing with the activity budgets and the project budgets. You might be readjusting things, but you're going to be, if they're, if the math rules are not supporting the edit, whatever screen you're working on and adjusting below something, it would throw an error message, and this would be one that should apply to this receipt page also.
Right. We do have some questions on the other functionality I'm just going to touch on, just to make sure we get to a couple of those as well.
Sure.
And the non-program income, just for a couple minutes, we'll get back to program income. Some people are wanting to know a little bit about the addresses. So the new address update, can they have any changes to the addresses in previous QPRs? And, for example, moving things around, is that part of the functionality change?
Yeah, the functionality change is really focused just on the quality of the addresses and making sure that they're real addresses. So this doesn't allow you to go back into prior QPRs. In order to go in and work with those QPRs would still have to be unapproved. This is, again, you only put in addresses for the current quarter for I guess the general guidances that meet a national objective. And so this doesn't affect your ability to go work with prior QPRs that have been approved. This is primarily, as you're putting it in, that we've got a few more tools, this Geocode Service Center and a map, to say, you know what, this address is good. And so, again, you can get a return address versus what was submitted, and you can go through changes. So, again, like on this particular one, if it was 314 Lemon Avenue, DRGR might actually make the change for you. You know, when you hit validate, and it'll say, this is what we think it is, and we are 80% confident. Past that, you know, again, if it gives you that red mark, the red cross through it, again, that's where I think most of the time you're going to need the thing that will help the most is to put in north, south, east, west. But, yeah, it will not affect your ability to go into approved QPRs.
Someone was asking, just as a follow-on, do you see that in future releases being able to go back and correct past data, past addresses that were entered into past QPRs?
You know, we can certainly look into that. But no, we hadn't planned on that. Our biggest change on this one we were hoping was for it to present multiple options again. Because here we were very focused on improving the quality of the addresses. So, but we do have obviously outstanding issues where there's duplications, things like that. So one of the things that we're hoping actually to do is we have a checkbox on the census data that says, does this activity duplicate another activity? So one of the things that we have talked about is having a checkbox for these other activities that are direct benefit activities that have addresses, so that it would be maybe something that would reduce redundancy in addresses or even beneficiaries for direct benefit activities across activities. But we'll actually, you know, talk to the programmers then and see, you know, if there's something clever they can think of in terms of making edits to prior addresses and prior QPRs. The issue is, again, is that, you know, those were supposed to be reviewed and supposed to be approved. So it's kind of hard to think of that separately than any other kind of data.
Right. I'm going to go back to the programming income. I think this is actually a question that's two parts, and so David will probably have you weigh in here as well. A couple of questions, actually, people are asking that the relation of this estimated program income that grantees need to go in and look at this estimated program income, and will the estimated programming increase the LH25 requirement, and how is program income for the 50% home set aside part of this conversation? So can we just clarify, David, the current guidelines for LH25 requirement for your grant funds, including program income?
Right. So the revised requirements say that the LH25% set aside does apply to program income, but I would be cautious in estimating what that program income might be, because obviously you don't want to overcommit yourself if you don't have to. So, and you know, you may end up having to go back and revise that. But as from a regulatory standpoint, what we would hold you to is what your numbers actually produced, right? Not just your estimates. Mark could probably walk you through what the best way would be to lay that out in DRGR. But from a policy perspective, you know, we wouldn't expect you to do more than what the 25% you know, equates to. What was the other half of that question?
Well, and then, yeah, so I think the other half is now going to Mark of talking through that in DRGR.
Okay. Gotcha.
Thanks, David.
Well, and I don't know that this is one of the things that will change. I think in IDS and DRGR, you know, you've got your estimates, you know, again, which are based on budgets. And so we're bumping up budgets here. So, you know, those numbers would be recalculated on that, you know, and it's lumped together there. But I think, as David said, you know, when it's spent, I think with the calculations we had in the system already were based on program income dispersed and grant funds dispersed, you know, as a part of total disbursements. So I think the overall expenditures test, you know, for the national objective, you know, of LH25 is based on those disbursements with, I think, with certain activities excluded like admin, if I remember correctly. But so those things, So the most impact is going to be on that projection side probably, because before you couldn't project, and include anything on the program income side. So those numbers will change a bit based on when you inflate the numbers. But again, I think that, like David was saying, the ultimate test is going to be on the what did you actually do and disperse.
Great. So again, good ideas here is pulling your reports, evaluating what your program says currently in DRGR, and where your estimations falls in. But you got to meet that requirement, as David said, of the total funds, including program income. You have to meet that 25% requirement.
Yeah. So the QPR should show some summary statistics, and the reports and the MicroStrategy should include ones that you can actually use to calculate things, more at the activity level, as opposed to those grant level summaries at the top. And if folks aren't seeing reports that really work well for that purpose, let me know, and we'll try to make sure that either point you to the right report, or if we don't have it, then we'll try to author something that works better for folks.
This is John. I just want to make one other observation there, which is that, despite how you may be aggregating funds in different activities or as a whole, the 25% set aside applies to the total amount of funds. So you're not obliged to do 25% of every activity in the same activity. You have flexibility. We're just looking for the total dollars to be spent that way.
Thanks, John. Keep going down our list of questions. I know we are approaching the 4 o'clock hour. We do have quite a few questions still going. Mark, are you still committed? Do you mind running over 10 or 15 minutes to see if we can get through a lot of these?
Yeah, no problem with me.
Okay. We'll do our best to keep going, guys. We know we have a lot of people still on the line, a lot of questions. We're going to keep moving. This is a grantee that just wants to verify. So we have no RLF accounts, and as a grantee, we keep all program income. So what reports do you suggest? Again, we're getting back to the reports running in order to create our plan to set up PI general accounts. And we got this question again and again, so I wanted to just repeat. We were talking about the FIN or financial report, kind of the Series 5. There's a 5A, 5B, and 5C now. Is that correct, Mark?
Well, there's always been those 5A, I think, through 5C. But to clarify on the question, if the grantee is retaining all program income, if they're asking for all the, the people they fund to return program income, they don't need to create a general account. Everything is assigned to a general account. So the grantees will only set up program income accounts for specific organizations that can retain them. There's no action needed, to set up a general account.
And so maybe the next statement too, Mark, is so inherently when you go in, this grantee doesn't need to set up any program income accounts. When they go in and receipt program income, because they did get a program income in from a sale of a house, let's say, they would go in and receipt it, and since they set up no program income, it automatically goes into this general account.
Right, and DRGR will automatically now, in the past, they would have to remember to do the draw from that because it's required. But now DRGR will automatically go and say, you've got this much available. You've got to draw it from program income. You've got a certain amount available. So they would have to spend program income first before they could, add on the program funds to support that draw.
Great. And just to remind people, too, so if you had in past QPRs, if you've already recorded program income receipted in past QPRs, in the data migration this weekend, it inherently put all that recorded PI into its general account. Okay, so you already have this general account started if you've already had program income received. If you need to go in and general account is not correct and you actually do need to do program income accounts because you're allowing some or all of your subrecipients to retain the program income themselves and you need to wall that off from your general, that's when you go in. Is that correct, Mark?
Yeah, and that's one of the first actions people should take is setting up those program income accounts for any, where people are allowed to retain it. Again, if there are no program income accounts, if everybody's supposed to be turning the program income back to you, you're not going to have to set up any accounts because remember, you're going to be receiving program income at the activity level. It's just that the activities are not assigned to an account. So again, you create a receipt at the activity level, and not only is the stuff that's being migrated in the general account, any new stuff you assign if it's not on an activity that is assigned to a program income account or a revolving loan fund, all your new receipts will also go to the general account, just to be real clear.
We have a grantee that stated that it's going to be a little difficult for them to project the amount of future PI. We're not sure to predict how many properties can be turned, how much in net proceeds future transactions will generate for it to be program income. So therefore, he's asking, I assume we would have the opportunities to adjust the overall budget at some point in the future.
And the answer for that is definitely yes. One of the tools you might want to think about is if you remember, probably people work a very lot on the cumulative financial total reports, but we also have reports that show data by quarter. So some of the reports that might help you project is to look at the financial reports for financial data by quarter, and I think, let me think here, one of them I think is 09B, Financial Report 09B. Look for the reports by quarter, and it might give you a good idea, for projecting, hey, across these activities, here's how much, for these activities versus those activities, how much we got per quarter or per year. You can add them up to year, and hopefully maybe that could be a good guidebook for, what do you think you're going to get over the rest of the grant. So, yes, you definitely can increase them as you go, but that's where, again, pull a cumulative financial report to give you a guidebook over what you think you want to, what the values are right now, what do you want to increase them to. But the by quarter one might give you an idea of, oh, here's how much we did per period, so that you can figure out, oh, but I think I need to inflate these 8 activities, but these others aren't earning enough, so I don't need to increase those.
Great. We have a couple of questions in the same vein where they're asking, they want to verify that currently, as to date, they've had no program income recorded or drawn, and they will not start generating program income they don't expect in the near future. So they want to make sure that as of today, they don't need to do anything with regards to this new program income functionality. Is that correct?
Yes. If you don't receive program income, you don't disperse it, then these program income means that you don't have to adjust any of your budgets. You don't have to estimate anything. You have the easiest jobs in the world, and that's going to be a lot of the disaster grantees. I think probably 95% of the disaster grantees fall into that category, and I don't know how many of the NSP ones. But certainly the disaster grantees, unless you're dispensing of property, like through buyouts or something, a lot of the disaster grantees will not have anything, and they are not going to have to make adjustments. It's just the ones that know that they are going to have money in from the proceeds of sale of property or something, or they do have a revolving loan fund. They will have to set these things up. So on the disaster side, again, there they might have economic development, and they might have a business revolving loan fund where they capitalize things. So the distinction for those especially would be that if it's, a forgivable loan, that they aren't getting proceeds back, just because it's called a loan, say for a housing program, doesn't mean you record that as program income. You would only record it, again, if you're expecting and you plan to create those receipts. So if it's a revolving loan fund that you're generating, new loans, or if it's a program income where you're receiving it and you expect to be, funding more to that activity or receiving it, then you definitely got to do this. But regardless of, again, whether you ask for the money to come back to the grantee or it gets retained by the people you fund.
As for NSP, just as an indicator, it looks to me, just from scanning the list here, that NSP1, I would bet you that 90% of the NSP1 grantees already have some program income, and the total amount is $403 million.
Great. Thanks, John. We have a grantee asking that they're looking at this and doing this a little bit, and they need some support. So when we receipt program income and click View Account, it shows the correct receipts to date and the PI balance available. However, when we go to Create Voucher section and attempt to enter a draw of program income on hand, it actually shows a negative $247,000 and will not allow us to submit the voucher. The amount that is showing in the Create Voucher section is a total of the PI receipted as of 9/30/11 plus what we entered today. It does not include PI receipted from 10/1 through yesterday. We're trying to understand exactly what's in the system and if there's any data corrections coming or how they
Which screen are they on that they're seeing is it the Create Draw?
when they're seeing the negative, it says when we go to the Create Voucher section and intend to enter a draw of program income on hand, it's showing a negative 247 and will not allow us to submit the voucher.
Yeah, in this case, what we'll have to do is, it really helps, again, for us to get a screenshot. If you've got data you can pull with a MicroStrategy report to do that. So, because it's conceivable that there are, as part of the migration that there's an issue. There's conceivable that there's a problem with something that didn't work right on the release. But for us to troubleshoot a real specific one like that, it would really help to get a screenshot, of that particular screen, send it to DRGR_help at HUD.gov, and then we'll get somebody on the team to look at it and try to figure out if it's something that, just needs to be reassigned, something that's not reporting right. But any kind of general things, we'll have to do that process of figuring out, is it a defect from the migration, the data migration? Is it a defect from the system? Or is it something we can help you work through that something needs to be reassigned or just changed? So again, DRGR_help at HUD.gov, and then someone will contact you either by email or, by phone and try to work with you.
Great. And just along that score, Mark, we had two questions also in here are asking about, do we also use a call-in number, or do you just want us to use the email address? And if so, what is the call-in number?
Do you have it on that last slide for the help desk?
Unfortunately, I don't think we provided that. I think we just have...
Yeah. The help desk line, I'm sorry, when you log into DRGR, there should be the help desk line, that's specific to DRGR, should be on that login page. It should be also, if you ever Google DRGR login, and it goes to the HUD.gov page that has, how do you create a new account, the number should be there also. I'm sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head. So you can certainly call there, but for something that's that specific, I think it's always better probably to, send us the screenshots and give us the data, so that we can actually try to research it a little bit and work with you. So, if it's just how do you walk through something, we certainly can talk you through it. But anything that's any more troubleshooting like that, it would be great for you to send us the material and send us the contact number to get back to you. Because especially with the release as new as it is, we'll have to figure out who can figure it out, and then it might depend on, again, whether or not we have to even send it to programmers if it's beyond our capabilities. But so I would tend to, right now, especially with the drawdown stuff, is to send the material in. If you don't get a response back real quick, then certainly follow up with a call, and then we'll try to escalate it. Because the ones we don't want to do is, obviously get in the way of you being able to draw funds, your grant funds.
Another question we have. Oh, sorry. Did you have something more, Mark?
If you're in doubt, don't just wait for the helpline. Call us, call your CPD rep, have them check with us. So the biggest thing, again, we don't want to have this functionality. We need to get you where you need to be. What are those key steps to get you to be able to draw your funds? Sorry.
No, please. So the next question, if available program income is recorded in a program income account that is different from the activity that you're going to do the draw for, it sounds like you don't have to use the available income that is available in the other activity. Is that correct?
Let me restate that again. Because
yes. I did it a one-for-one because I wanted to see. So if available program income is recorded in a program income account, but it's different from the activity that you're doing a draw for. So, for example, you receipted program income into one activity, but you're wanting to do a draw for another activity. They're trying to understand that correlation. It sounds, this is my understanding of the question, it sounds like you don't have to use the available income for that activity that you receipted it for. Is that correct?
Well, and that's where let's go through two scenarios here, because the way that's worded, if it's on an activity, if the program income is received on an activity within a program account, within a program income account, on an activity, it could be even separate on another one, it will impact the ability to draw any program funds within that account. So again, program income is recorded on an activity. So if it's with a program, if it's recorded on an activity within a program income account, it will affect your ability to draw grant funds on any activity within that program income account. Same thing applies to RLF, same thing applies to general. If you record it on a program income, again, program income account 1, let's look at the city A here that's showing. If it's recorded on city A, which has a program income account, but you've got to draw from city B, then the thing in a separate program income account will not affect your ability to draw on another activity outside the program income account. So again, that's the main thing is that each program account tells you which activities you want to apply those rules to. That's the purpose of the program income accounts and the revolving loan funds. So within the account, it definitely affects your ability to draw. Are you reading one of the other questions?
Maybe we lost her for a second. Hey, this is John. I just wanted to jump in here with a little background information on revolving loan funds. I think Mark has pointed out that you have to set one up separately before you can assign funds to it. It's not a complicated process, but it's not a very well marked requirement in the regulations. So it's in the CDBG regulations at 570.500B in the definitions. And the accounts have to be interest-bearing and need to be a separate fund. And basically, it needs to be established for the purpose of continuing the same activity. So it has some restrictions on what you can do with it, maybe a little bit more than even the activities under, say, a particular subrecipient. So.
And do you have any real-world examples you can throw out there from the NSP side?
You know, I haven't really seen all that many, Mark. I know there's a few out there, and it's, you know, like people talk about lump sum drawdown. That's a little bit more complicated because you have to have, there's certain requirements in terms of the structure, having an agreement, you know, getting something from the bank. This is really just a way to
and so that's one of the things. So I tried to set up, like, we had a DRGR action plan review checklist. We're trying to work on drafting one for program income review. But that's probably one of the first questions, again, is it a loan fund where you're getting proceeds back in to make new loans on the same activity type? If it's not, which is very few of them, almost everything else is the program income account, and I really think program income accounts are going to work a little bit easier for folks than the RLF projects. So as much as possible, if you don't have that, just focus in on those program income accounts as much as possible. That's
I think they might even, the revolving funds may be even a little tighter way to wrap that up, but I agree with you. I think that the way you've got this set up now where you can segregate it by a subrecipient and activity and so forth, that's going to accomplish the same thing, and it's going to be a little simpler.
Yeah, and again, I think that the first thing folks are going to have to do before they even bump things up is, again, set up these accounts as quickly as possible so that you're not, you know, that any program income that's floating around is not adversely affecting your ability to do draws. Well, I think we've lost folks.
I'm here. I'm sorry. I was on mute. I had a great conversation with myself, but we still have tons of questions in the queue, and I'm assuming we might have one or two on the operator, so why don't we just grab a question or two on the operator? Is there any calls that have come in through the line?
We have no questions over the phone.
Great. We'll keep going with the write-ins then. So another question we have here, we're going to go back to this screen. The question was around they're not sure if they understand this scenario with regards to program income. Isn't the program income available in box E3? It's for this example. Isn't the program income available in box E3 on this supposed to be $140,000?
You know, we've gone through so many versions of the slide, I wouldn't be surprised if it is. You know, because I think it's here, let's see, it's 630, yeah, because see, if you look at line 4 up there, I think this is one of the ones we had versions of it. Sorry, guys. It's 630 minus 140 is supposed to be 490. So the program, I'm sorry, which one? A3?
I think they're asking about the $165,000 line.
$165,000 is program income at the activity level, and that's not what affects things. It's the program income at the program income account level that affects stuff.
So maybe if you can explain that, because I think that's where the questioner.
Again, that's where we showed, you know, the right 3 columns are, you know, activity level. The left column is program income account level, or RLF for that matter. But again, if there's 4 activities here, this means we've drawn, let's see, 210,000 of program income across those 4 activities, only 120 from this particular activity. But the balance from all 4 activities is going to impact your ability to draw grant funds here. So let's see, so it's the 630 minus the 140 that tells you how much program income can be drawn on this particular activity. So one of the things that's most confusing, and that means every time you make an adjustment, that's going to recalculate, every time you make a draw and pull off these program income, it's going to tell you how much do you have left on that activity or individual activities within a program income account to draw from grant funds. That's the kind of the nature of it, is that it's become a dynamic, changing thing that automatically recalculates that you're not having to make those adjustments. Did I get at it, or are we still?
I think so, and I think also for grantees out there, let me go to this screenshot for folks. This is a screenshot. We have a couple questions, is where do people find that kind of graphic for themselves? We got this graphic straight from DRGR. If you are going into create a voucher, as you notice here, this is in the drawdown screen of create vouchers, and you're on create voucher page 2, it pops up once you choose which activities you're going to have part of your voucher. It pops up where it says the available amount, and that is a hyperlinked number, and you can click on that, and when you click on that, you literally get the screenshot we're showing you here right now. And the screenshot now gives you, this is a new part of the new release, it gives you a more robust analysis of what's out there. It tells you not only what program income account that this activity is attached to, but it also then gives you this full analysis.
Yeah, so because again, the way it worked in 7.2 was if you clicked on a line item that was program funds, it would show you here's the grant budget, here's the, for this fund, for this activity. Here's the grant obligation for this activity. Here's the amount drawn. Here's the available amount for program funds. It was activity level. Again, any activity, it was kind of confusing before because program income would always look like the same amount across your line items because it was calculated at the grant level, and it would take you to that grant level available screen. Now when you click on this, both program income and program funds will take you to this one common available amount calculation screens. So that's one of the things that works quite a bit different. Since we're making the 2 interact now, we are going to display each time so you can see what is it. So what will happen then is if this is kind of your guidepost, if you're going to go in and say, wait a second, I don't have, I'm not supposed to have 731 available. This activity is for this organization, Alaqua County, and it shouldn't be affected by 731. That's from a whole other county. That kind of tells you that what you need to do to free up that money would probably be go to set up for whatever other activities that have the program income received. You might have to go set up the program income accounts for those and then come back and redo this draw, because then if you've walled it off with those program income accounts for 3 other counties maybe, then all of a sudden that program income draw will be based on those others, all that other program income will disappear off of the general account, and you might have 0 left available on program income, and then the whole amount is going to be program funds. But this is kind of an example of, you look at the draw screen for that particular activity, and if you see something here, we just wanted you to know, how do you kind of think through, oh gosh, this is because I didn't set up the PI accounts like they said, or something like that.
Great. Thanks, Mark. We have a couple questions that are more housekeeping in nature before we get back to content. Someone's asking again for the slides. So the slides will be posted on the Learning Center. When do we think they will be posted, Vinny?
They'll be posted by tomorrow or the next day.
Great. But they are, most everyone that's part of the NSP listservs receives the listserv that reminds people about this training. Is it correct that the slides were part of that? Is that true, Vinny?
For the training listserv, you mean?
Correct.
I'm not sure, actually.
Okay, we'll double check. And then also we have folks saying, and Mark, is this correct? Does it sound that 1-800-998-9999 and then option 3 would be the correct DRGR help desk? A couple of grantees have emailed that in to us.
Let me look on it. Hold on. Because
Okay.
we have had, just so you know, we have had a help desk change. We've gone from Lockheed Martin to Centerscope, and so they are in the process of, staffing up. So in all likelihood, they're all going to be routing, the stuff to us. So when you do call, don't expect, that the person answering that line is going to help you immediately. They're going to route you to someone else on the team that's available. So the DRGR help desk number, I'm seeing is, hopefully it's still current. It's 1-888-297-8689. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. 1-800-998-9999.
Right. Again, 1-800-998-9999.
Yeah, the other number, I'm sorry, was the main HUD help desk. And they won't be able to help you at all. Well, not with program income.
We do have a grantee. I think this is something you brought up earlier. A grantee has had these issues with the cumulative totals in prior QPRs, and they were told the problem was escalated to you, Mark, for some fixes. They were just wondering what's the time frame for that next release going to happen that will do some of the fixes.
We've only gotten stuff in from a couple of grantees, but it's going to affect a wider group of grantees. Again, I think what we're going to, if it's the ones that we've just heard this last week, then the cumulative total issues that we've got, I'm expecting it'll happen in the next week or so. We just want to make sure there's nothing in other major. We're definitely going to do it before the QPR, the quarter, because we want folks to be able to submit QPRs that look accurate. But we want to wait just a couple of days to make sure that there's nothing else major, because the HUD does not let us do many emergency releases. I think the most we've done in the past has been 3 from a major release, and it gets harder and harder each time. So we're going to hold off a few days. So I'm guessing probably by the end of this week or early next week.
A couple more non-PI. Will the activity navigation function and the edit action plan page also be available when selecting activities for a draw?
Right now, the only place that index is going to display again is going to be only on the edit action plan page. So draws usually, again, the draw pages, you're actually doing a search by draw. There's a search, and then edit. So the problem is with the action plan and with the QPRs, there's not a search function. Both of those are working off of indexes. So the search activity to obligate, search activity to draw, none of those navigations changed. So again, this release, the first one we tackled was the action plan. The one we'll tackle next will be the QPR. But the other ones already have search functions in them. It's these ones that people had to scroll down a list of hundreds that I thought this would be the biggest improvement on. So action plan now, QPR probably the next big release, probably in February.
The disaster grantee, some projects may not have street addresses, for example, drainage, sewage lines, et cetera. Will there be a mechanism to add latitude, longitudinal data directly, or is it just addresses?
Right now, I think we are looking at adding addresses on the action plan side, but it wasn't in this release, where they can geocode. But for the most part, this is for direct benefit activities, not area benefit activities. So I don't expect for things like infrastructure that they'll be able to do a lat long. Just not something, again, this is leveraging existing HUD functionality, which is geocoding addresses. So we don't have anything in the works to just assign a lat long for stuff. Because the most part we could do is at some point is if we've got the most part we tend to do is something that would be a centroid, but that's getting real technical. And I don't know that, again, it's something that's, if we've got the areas benefits, that's the most important thing for us is, again, the national objective. So we'll add addresses on some things like maybe public facilities on the action plan side or multifamily on the action plan side, but not for something that's, like, again, just strictly that long on something like an infrastructure activity.
Great. Getting back, going along the lines of this mapping information, will the mapping data be available in a report so the grantee can create their own maps?
I am actually, it's part of I've got a ton of new reports that are part of this release, and so I am going to publish a report, for grantees and HUD staff so that they can pull this data as a spreadsheet, whatever data that I'm getting returned, so that you can pull it into, geocode. So it's on the list of ones that I've got to reauthor. I've been focused mainly on the program income ones first, and then we will be publishing in a couple of weeks probably after I get through the ones that are the most helpful for the program income. I'll be publishing, and I've already authored the reports. It's just a matter of putting them out there into your folders, into the grantee and HUD user folders. But again, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be also, we're working with the folks that are doing the consolidated plan mapping tool, and they are cleaning up that data to get rid of duplicates, things like that. And so that data hopefully will be available on a mapping tool too. So, and I think we're anticipating a quarterly update of those addresses that are cleaned up to show in the maps. Right. So we'll hopefully have it both ways for you.
And Hunter, I just wanted to take a pause. We have probably about 8 more questions unanswered here. And Mark, shall we keep going? How would you guys like us to proceed? We are at 4:20 and we still have quite a few attendees online.
I'm fine with going ahead.
Sure, let's knock this out.
Okay, let's keep going, guys. If the total in program income received from one responsible organization is less than $25,000 for 1 year, does it have to be recorded in the DRGR system? And again, please note it said if the total in program received from one responsible organization is less than 25 in 1 year.
And this is kind of going over to the policy side. I think that's one of the distinction I thought was I'm trying to make and understand is that threshold, is it spending the $25,000 or receiving it, John and David? Is there a distinction from the policy side?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
But so the general threshold I've heard, bandied about has been at $25,000. If it's less than $25,000, we don't need to report it, for a particular organization. So that's for the entire grant, though. So it's going to be a pretty rare circumstance where, a total grant, regardless, so that would include all the different, revolving loan funds and separate accounts. So it's not down to the activity level. That's at the grant level threshold.
It's cumulative, yeah.
So anything
right.
that they get, then if the grant exceeds that threshold, anything should be recorded.
Exactly.
Okay. So we'll probably need to put out an FAQ on that because I've certainly heard it, by organization before too. So we probably need to issue an FAQ on that effect.
Okay.
That there's a grant threshold, not an activity threshold.
Right. We can work something up.
That'd be great.
The next question we have is we fall under Scenario A, which for folks out there, just remember, Scenario A is where a grantee is the one that has all the program income coming back to them as a grantee. No one's retaining anything. So they keep all the program income. We estimate the total program income we expect to receive for the grant and then also estimate what we plan to receive in each activity. That's their question. Do we do both? Or do we just record the program income when we receive it in that activity and we're done?
It's actually going to be a cascading thing again. So does it say, it doesn't say anything about the size of the grant or the number of activities, right?
Nope, you got everything.
Okay. No, again, we need things done at all levels. Again, the best thing, again, I can say is pull a report that shows what your program income has been to date and what you've dispersed, and maybe even look at by quarter because you're going to be the grantees will be the best person to guess. But if they're expecting more program income, all we've done is bump it up. The amounts you've received and the amounts you've dispersed if it's exceeded the budgets. We really need you to go to all the different levels. Go to the action plan page, estimated program income, but, do the analysis first and then figure out how, because before you can bump up the activity budgets, you'll have to bump up the estimated program income account on the action plan page. You'll have to bump up the estimated project amount on the project page, and then it cascades down to the activity budget. So it's whatever you think you're going to still need to increase. All we've done is we've tried to make sure you're not getting error messages because the program income and program fund draws you've made to date have exceeded the existing obligation or budgets. But, my biggest fear is that, past, people not setting up their program income accounts pretty quickly is, again, that folks aren't going to go and refresh and update this information to be based on their projections. They'll get to the point where they're desperate for a draw, and they won't have made these updates. So, again, it's going to be your best judgment of what you need to increase these to, but it needs to be at all the levels. You can't do activity budget. You might not be able to do activity budget and project budget increases unless you've increased that estimated program income first. Did I get out all of it?
I think so, and I think we have another grantee has a similar related question here, Mark. They're asking, when I receipt a program income by using this new receipt functionality for an activity, does that automatically increase the activity budget on my behalf?
And the answer is no. The receipt is independent. You're creating those budgets at the activity and project level and the estimated PI to accommodate the receipts. So, the ones on the activity level, again, you have to think through, is this activity budget fixed because they are supposed to use the program income instead? So those are the ones you're not going to have to increase. It's the ones that you say, you know what, I'm expecting a big volume, you will have to manually go increase. Again, most of this release was really especially trying to get rid of you having to go and edit all the time to decrease budgets, grant fund budgets. So, again, we'd like you to take a pass at one time, do an analysis, and bump the things up because, no, it will not automatically increase your budgets. We don't know whether or not the budget's supposed to increase or not. The overall activity budget is supposed to increase or not, so we would not build that into the system. So it's a nature of only someone can tell us, based on their funding agreements with someone, what those budgets should be, and also, again, whether or not there's PI accounts. What that's operationalizing, what kind of funding agreements do you have? So we've tried to accommodate it as much as we can in the system, but other things are going to definitely depend on you as a grantee to go in and make these edits.
Great, thanks. Another question. Mark mentioned a grantee needing to report on PI that is not actually returned to the grantee for DRGR reporting purposes. So if a grantee records PI in a PI account generated by a subrecipient, but the subrecipient does not actually return the PI to grantee based on the agreement, wouldn't DRGR restrict the PI account draws based on the amount DRGR thinks is receipted?
It's not thinks receipted. Again, the thing we want to try to get around is thinking that you're recording program income on an account. You're creating a program account that lists which activities fall under it. You're creating program income receipts on those individual activities, and then the program income rules will affect any draw or any activity within that program income account. So DRGR will check that screen that we showed you to show here's the available balance for all here's the information we have for the whole account, and it'll show you then here's the information we have for that individual activity, and it'll calculate those things on the fly every single time based on what's been recorded. So the main thing to remember is the rules apply within a program income account. In terms of program income availability versus program funds, they apply within a project, our RLF project. And if they're not in one of those, then it's a free-for-all and it applies to any activity unassigned that is still in the general account.
Great. Hence the reason people that have folks, subrecipients that are keeping their program, retaining their program income, you've already receipted this, you're going to need to wall this off so it's not does not affect your draws for the other organizations or yourself.
Yeah, do it fast, do it quick.
So I think this is a question for John and David really quickly. Is the 25% threshold on program income received being measured for total program income earned since 10/19/2010?
Yes, except for NSP2, which we haven't formally, we need to make a separate notice statement on that, but NSP1 and NSP3 everything is after that date. But NSP1 after that date, yes, everything is covered.
And I think a follow-up to this from another grantee is also an NSP2 grantee asking, do NSP2 grantees also have to include program income in the LH25 requirement? They haven't seen guidance calling out NSP2 yet.
Yeah, it's not out yet. It should be out. We're coming out with a sort of a number of notice clarifications. David mentioned the closeout and reallocation and a number of other things, hopefully next month.
Thanks, John. Someone's asking, can you move, quote-unquote, move program income from one activity to another?
Yeah, that would be, if you're talking about program income received, you would do that through the edit receipt screen. If you're talking about program income dispersed, it would be through the revised voucher screen.
We only have one more question here in the lineup. Before I get to it, operator, did we have anybody else call in that we've missed?
We do have one. Julie, go ahead.
Hi, this is Julie Peterson with the state of Missouri, and I've kind of been on the call from the beginning, kind of going through some screens with the state of Missouri, and I'm running into screens that aren't making a whole lot of sense. For example, it's telling me I can't delete performance measures, things that I'm not actually doing. It's telling me, for example, the screenshot says performance measures cannot be removed. I'm not removing any performance measures. Who do I send screens like that to? Because it will not allow me to edit my program income accounts or things like that. It doesn't let me, it basically stalls me. I can't go to the next step because it's telling me I've removed performance measures that I have not removed. It's like it's removing them for me, or edits from prior QPRs or things like that. So just
Julie,
curious.
Go to DRGR_help, and then we'll route it to the contractors, after we figure out, a lot of these are going to be from the new release potentially, if it's a strange error message like that. But
right.
we need a screenshot and go ahead and include the thing that's saying what you're doing.
Okay.
Right. If it is giving us something nonsensical like that, then we definitely need, I was trying to do this, I was on this screen, I took this.
Yeah, I have all that. Right,
yeah.
right. Okay, and just for clarification, as a state, what we're doing is we allow our NSP grantees, obviously, to keep their program income. We have hired a contractor who we have our own portal, and so our grantees have been reporting all receipts of program incomes and all draws against that program income in a system that we maintain. What we've been doing is attempting to, the QPR system actually worked for us because we entered the amounts as they gave them to us in the QPR. Now we actually have to go in and try to figure out a couple of different reasons why our amounts in total, our amounts, what the system shows I have receipted in program income, drawn in program income is the same. However, even after I went in and set up the PI accounts, it's not assigning the correct amount remaining to each activity to the right activity. I'm just trying to figure out, based on that, if you have any steps I may be missing. Do I need to obligate? What am I obligating first? I guess that's once you set up the program income account, what is the very next step in, if you've already had program income receipted in QPRs, how do you go back and make sure that what was, for example, at Florissant, Missouri, whatever was in their responsible organization or project, for whatever reason, it's not showing back up where it should. And I'm just trying to find out if you have any troubleshooting ideas.
But when you're saying it's not showing up on the QPR or when you're searching receipts?
It shows up, but I wrote this down, so let me try to, it's like it, all right, hang on.
Because we've got a known error that's not displaying correctly on the QPR side right now, so that's where,
okay.
If it's on that side, that's one of the things I was covering earlier.
Right, I heard that. I wondered if that's what you were referring to. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think it's specific to program income. I think they recoded a lot of the page, some new programmers.
Right.
And so they are making cumulative totals add up. They're, instead of just pointing to tables that are data tables that say activity and this, that, and the other, program income, total drawn, regular total drawn, they went back in and accidentally, whoever didn't understand, I think recoded it to cumulative totals on the fly, which are wrong. So that's the one that we're expecting a release out in the next.
Okay, great.
If it's showing up on the search receipt stuff wrong, definitely we've got a huge problem, and then we try to figure out how do we, is it something that's, again, a data migration issue? Or my guess is, again, that you can reassign stuff if it was something else. But anything on the side, I think we just kind of put that on hold right now until we get the fix in. Okay.
Right. No, and honestly, all the reports that I'm used to running, it shows the correct amount drawn and dispersed. It matches with the state's records. What I'm running into now is once I've made all these edits that we're talking about, create the PI account, when I actually try to do a mock draw, it's giving me a zero amount of program income, which isn't entirely correct because in that item, in that project, there was like $1,400 left that I could use. I'm trying to figure out how to find that program income. Even though I've set up the accounts and in prior QPRs it was assigned to that project, it's not showing up. And what it's doing, at least what I think it's hard to tell, but it's increasing the amount available from program funds. And I'm just trying to figure out, based on that, if you know if there's something I'm not doing correctly, because I cannot get the program.
Julie,
go ahead.
Stuff done yet under this release? So we don't have anything yet. So again, we'll have to look at how you've set up, the PI accounts versus a project, because you're using the word project, but I think you mean activities.
Yeah, and it did a great job when I went in and signed the program. It's the responsible entity, and then you assign it the activities. All that was set up the way we did it, so it all just flowed very nicely. What I'm finding is it's like it can't find where my program income is.
Julie,
go ahead.
Julie, let's one and put it into the help desk and work through a specific example instead of going through it on the call, though. Okay.
Okay, we'll do.
Thanks.
Thanks. Let's grab our last question. We received two actually really quickly. I think one's really quickly. So someone's reading some errors when trying to run some reports. Is that also because of an issue with the new release, or is that just what's happening right now and hopefully it will get taken care of? Mark, do you know?
We'd have to see what kind of error that they're getting. So again, it has to go to the help desk. We had, I don't know if it's, which report it's with and what kind of an error it is. The whole pages aren't displaying. So we'll need specifics for things to troubleshoot. We don't have any known general issues on the MicroStrategy reports as part of this release right now.
One last question, which is really essential that we make sure everyone really understands this before getting off, is they're asking, they want a confirmation. I think we need to clarify this, Mark. They're asking, can you explain whether grantees can create PI accounts or RLF accounts in the system before they create a PI or RLF at the project level? So this is essential. You guys all understand this because that's not correct. Go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat it because, it sounds like chicken and egg thing, which can go first.
And then I think what the question is, they're asking, do we create a PI account first before we do a PI project level? And what we're trying to really help people understand, there is no such thing as a program income project level. It's only an RLF at the project level. So maybe can you kind of delineate that difference again for us?
Yeah, so again, the project RLF is only for if you're going to create, new loans out of the proceeds of repayments of existing loans. That would be using on the edit project screen. We think probably the bread and butter of the NSP program especially is going to be PI accounts, which are probably going to be much simpler to work off of. And so, again, we've got existing receipts that'll have to be, what you're going to end up doing is creating those PI accounts, assigning activities to them, and then what will happen is anything that's an existing receipt or anything that's a new receipt automatically gets assigned to the PI account that the activity is associated with. So it's the key concept to remember is, yes, you create especially the PI accounts, but you're not recording receipts to them. You continue to record them to activities, and then they'll just be grouped together, by whatever, whether it's the general account, if it's unassigned again, or if it's to a specific one, that'll be grouped to that particular one. So you can see, I think Janine just changed to the screen, the search program income accounts will say, here's which activities belong to which program income accounts. So that's a good way to do it right now. If you're wanting to know, once you start creating those accounts, how much program income is received, dispersed, and available on a particular program income account, again, I think just yesterday I published a report called Finance Report 5C. I'm sorry, the receipt one, and this is for Julie too. Julie, there's a receipt report that would be Finance Report 5C. The new report that summarizes program income received, dispersed, and available balances at the program income account level will be 5D. Again, it will not show the general account. It'll only show ones that you've set up. So it's more for how do I check on ones once I've got it going.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Before we wrap up, I just want to give a little bit of an announcement here for folks. So how do we get help? We've had a few people ask about how do I get help, as well as how do we do more webinars, et cetera. So I'm going to help you guys through this. So how do we get more help? There's a few resources you can have. Let's talk through them. Mark has said over and over again about the DRGR email. Can you repeat that email for us, Mark?
DRGR_help@HUD.gov. And again, that's going to go to a help desk, but we also have HUD staff people that actually review those emails. And we have a few team members, in addition to the contractors, we have team members and probably some NSPTA providers that we'll be trying to use to make sure we get through the bulk of these and deal with especially program income things on a timely basis.
Great. So also, if you guys are wanting to do more macro things, like you want to talk through how to set this up with someone, think about it a little bit more generally. It's not going to affect your next draw. If it's affecting your next draw, get into the help desk. Let's talk about it. If it's not going to affect your next draw, you're not that concerned about it. It's a more macro. You can also request technical assistance and have someone support you in thinking this through as well. But again, if you got to get to a draw right away, you need questions answered right away, go through the help desk. Also, request technical assistance if you need to have a more macro, longer-term perspective with a TA provider. As you guys know, too, don't hesitate to talk to your CPD reps if there's emergent issues, or also, Mark, you had talked about some people are getting different kind of error things aren't computing right. Again, go through the help desk. Things will escalate to Mark or other HUD reps that are DRGR specialists.
Yeah.
Lastly, also, for folks that want to make sure everyone knows that to answer the SurveyMonkey as well, people have replied to us in the Q&A saying we need more webinar on this or that. This is where your voice is heard in these SurveyMonkeys as well, connecting with HUD and your CPD reps, et cetera. But feel free to fill out the SurveyMonkey and request additional assistance or what other webinars you'd like on this subject.
And
Anything
if I could just make one more pitch for on the help, it might help us to route things directly. Try to be real specific and, descriptive in the email header, the subject line, so that we know is it program income, can't draw, program income account can't set up. Just try to come up with something very descriptive, error message, performance measures, just so that, instead of having to dig through what the issues are in the email, hopefully that'll help us expedite routing them real quick. So try to use those subject lines as the best you can. We'd really appreciate it.
Great. Anything else from any other members? Hunter, John, David?
No, we're good. Thank you.
Great. Well, you guys have bear with us for almost 2 hours and 45 minutes, an important subject, so we wish you all luck. Again, please use resources at hand. Take a second, learn it to the best you can, and we look forward to talking with you in the future.
Thanks.
Thank you, and that will conclude today's conference. We thank you for your participation.